Welcome back, everybody. Uhuru. Community thrill. Hands up. I love it. So I hope everybody enjoyed lunch. Thank you again so much. That was delicious. I'm actually going to hand over the emceeing duties for this next portion to another USM comrade, Len Demmer.
Right. So this is just really an amazing convention. This is my first in-person convention, and it's just amazing. I've seen pictures, and it's such an honor to be here. And I just want to say that in 2020, I had a roommate who was an impediment at the time and was watching the USM convention online because it was COVID, and she invited me to tune in, and I did, and I joined at that convention. So this is my third anniversary of convention. I just want to thank you, Sarah, for welcoming me up. And our next panel that we're going to have is titled "A Moment of Peril and Promise." And this is a quote from last year's convention that the chairman described this moment in history as a moment of peril and promise. And this was weeks after the escalation of Russia's defensive war against US and world colonial powers. And the crisis of imperialism, it's this unequal equilibrium between the past and the future. That is this moment of peril and promise. So today we are going to be welcoming up Secretary General of the African Socialist International, Moezi Kinshasa. He is building the African People's Socialist Party around the world. Then we will hear from Nancy Mansour, who is a co-founder of Existence is Resistance, which is an organization that advocates for the right of Palestinian people to resist and struggle for their land and liberation. We're really honored to have her here today. And the Uhuru Solidarity Movement stands fully with the Palestinian people in this struggle against the Israeli colonial settler state. And Uhuru. And we thought that this was an important organization to feature due to the current escalation of genocidal war on the West Bank. And then we will be hearing from Chairwoman Penny Hess again, welcoming Penny Hess back up. And finally, we would also be hearing from the chairman again, will be speaking on the depths of this crisis, the colonial mode of production, and how the African Revolution is the only way forward. So let's welcome up.
Again,
Yes.
I think you should mention that Comrade Luisi is from Congo and he's living right now, like in England. That's where he's speaking
Yes.
from. London.
Yeah, so Secretary General Luisi is joining us here from London, but he is from Congo. True.
Through Secretary General Luisi, can you hear us?
Oh, I can hear you now. Yes, sir.
True. So you are our first panelist. Thank you so much for being on.
Whoa, Comrade JC.
Yeah.
Whoa, comrades. I just want to express deep appreciation for being invited by the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. I think this is a great privilege. And I will first of all like to salute Chairman Amadi Istela, who's a genius, has provided us with the theory and the strategy to complete the Black Revolution of the 60s, to build a new world and to turn our back, not just Africans, but the whole humanity, to turn our back on our world built on a colonialism as a mode of production. This is fantastic. There is a solution for everyone, and everyone will unite with the struggle to destroy the foundation upon which this capitalist system rests. So I just want to recognize that, and I want to salute the leadership of APAC, Chairman Penias, and the leadership of USM Chair JC, and I want to salute all the distinguished guests who have been invited to be part of this convention. And just the fact that this convention takes place every year is itself a serious commitment. So I want to salute that too. And as it's been said, I'm right here in London. And as you know, London used to be the center of the world, of the colonial capitalist world for centuries. England ruled the world. You know, they said, or they used to say, they presided over an empire upon which the sun never sets. Well, it was maybe true that time. They bragged about it that time, but they can't brag about it today. So when people began to say British colonialism is in decline, it was real. And now we can see the decline of that. It used to be the leading world power. Now I'm not sure if it's fifth or sixth, you know, and I just watched some news yesterday. And, you know, countries like Indonesia, Brazil, you know, should this system exist, will be above Britain. So the decline continues. And I'm just saying that because now we're talking of the decline of the United States, And this is real. This is real. And for those who are used to see United States, you know, going around the world, you know, bossing everyone, destroying countries, you know, overturning anti-colonial governments and, you know, imposing their will, you know, by the force of weapons. England is a good example that the power of the United States is not forever. And that's why today we're talking of a multipolar world. You know, it's just reality. You know, unipolar world, the United States dominating over the world as they used to do, they can't do that anymore. That's reality. So the possibility of the end of the United States power is real. So we just want people who are not used to see the United States being in decline to accept that as a reality. That's real, and more people around the world can recognize that. It's not just us, because with the fear of African internationalism, we knew that way back 40 years ago, we could say that, but now everybody can say it. And that's very significant for us, as we are involved in serious campaign, serious struggle, hands off Uhuru, hands off Africa. You can see for many years, for decades, particularly in the 60s, you just wake up and you hear there is a social explosion of struggle somewhere. It could be in Kenya, it could be in the Congo, it could be in the US, the Cuban Revolution, all these, big changes that occurred. People just, did not theorize it, particularly in a colonized country, like in Africa, the African nation, Black people in general, didn't sit down and say, let us work out a theory, how we're going to change the world. We embrace, in most of the cases, we embrace theories, the way available, until people like Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X, struggle to explain our situation, our struggles with our own terms and things like that. But now we are in a very different place. We're in a very different world. For the first time, we have this theory of African internationalism that Chairman developed. We can begin not only anticipated this fall, but we can also now anticipate the growth of mass struggles everywhere. And these mass struggles will not be just spontaneous explosion. Even there are spontaneous, explosion of struggle, which are not bad thing as long as African internationalists are on the ground. This in itself is a big change, and we believe this is a big factor in this world that's changing, because people talk about the rise of China, the rise of Russia and the others, but we have to begin to talk of the rise of African resistance guided by African internationalists. That is significant because it's not spontaneous. We know what we want. People are demanding people are demanding multipolar world. We're demanding the end of a world built on colonialism, because there are no two world systems, only one. It's only one world system based on colonialism. We want that to go. So we're demanding that. These distinguishes, this is going to be increasingly the line of demarcation for people to know exactly what kind of world we want to build. We want a new world, and that world has to be informed by the eradication of colonialism, and that it has to be something we struggle for, and we want to win the whole planet, the whole humanity. Every fighting force against colonialism, any force that consider themselves to be progressive, we want to win them to take a stand against colonialism and to be in solidarity, if there are no Africans, with the struggle for national liberation of African people. That's why we salute the comrades who have joined USM. That's the right way, the right direction. And the other thing I want to say, just the significance of the United States imperialism, and also, of course, the significance of the struggle of Africans inside the United States and in Americas in general. I was watching a video of a former minister of Laurent Désiré Kabila. His name is Didier Mumengi, and it's quite interesting because his dad, Mathias Kemishenga, was one of the few people who stayed with Lumumba when Lumumba decided to flee the capital of Congo to go to the eastern Congo to reorganize. But unfortunately, he didn't make it, as you all know. But he was with about 4 people. One of the person he was with Lumumba, he said to Didier Mumengi, who was a minister of Laurent Désiré Kabila some 20 years ago. He said Lumumba told his dad that they're going to kill him because he has taken the decision to unite with Nkrumah to make Congo and Ghana one country, and then Guinea of Secretary and the Mali of Modibo would join them shortly. And since Lumumba didn't have an army, he relied on Nkrumah to send the soldiers, since the two countries will be one. So the state will greatly be formed around the Ghanaian army plus the African soldiers who will come from the United States. And I never heard that before, because this is a great testimony. It's coming from a former minister, Laurent Desiré Kabila, whose dad was from Lumumba. And they mentioned there was a rebellion in the US, in Texas, like Bromsville, but I didn't get that because it's, exactly. But the point is, according to this testimony, Lumumba and Nkrumah considered the African soldiers in the US to be part of a new state that being built in the Congo, regardless of those soldiers in the political education at the time. But that's the concept that being discussed, being accepted, that the new African nation has to include Africans everywhere, in the US, everywhere. I think that is a powerful concept, and I think it just validates what African internationalism is been saying. So we just have to speed it up, develop, deepen the African national consciousness that we are Africans, we are part of African nation, and we are fighting to consolidate our nation. It can't happen without everyone getting involved in the struggle under the leadership of the African working class. This also is a new thing that now, like in the 60s, the African bourgeoisie anticipated, because they knew they were the most educated and things like that, that should colonialism be reformed, they will be the one to benefit. And we also, the African working class, we are clear, not only the colonial system as a global mode of production needs to go, but the collapse of this system under our own effort, under our own struggles, will give rise to a new social force in power, the African working class. We are also anticipating that, and that's why I love the slogan, preparing to govern. And that's why I love all this campaign to deepen the political education, so we can raise the general level of the African working class, so he can see itself as a class fit to govern, must fight to be in power, must fight to be in control of state power, must fight to control the banks, all these institutions, all these key aspects that form basically the skeleton, so to speak, of any nation. The African working class must be over that. So these is just powerful moments in the history. So I was going to talk about the United States role, basically, and stop here, because I think that's really significant. Everyone knows, wherever there is a struggle for freedom, the primary force to oppose that freedom is the United States. You want to talk about Cuba? Who is opposed to Cuba's freedom? You see the United States. You want to talk about Black people in America? Who is opposed to freedom of Black people in America? You see the U.S. ruling class. You go to North Korea. Who is opposed to North Korea and South Korea being united? You see the United States. Who was opposed to Nkrumah and Lumumba forming a union of Congo, Ghana, so they can launch the Union for Africa, Kwame dreamed of? The United States government. Who murdered Lumumba? Who overthrew Nkrumah? You will see the United States. So it's been quite clear for everyone from the past up to now. If you take Libya, who killed Gaddafi, you see the US today. Who attacked Syria, who attacked wherever there is a struggle for freedom, you will see always the United States as the ruling class, as a force that's opposed to anyone being independent from the control or from the rule of the US. And this is why African internationalism is fundamental, because what it does, it removes the gaps between African people everywhere, because African internationalism, being born definitely inside the United States in a struggle to get to end the domination of Black community inside the US, has that aspect that the United States is recognized from the beginning, from the start. And this has to be systematized throughout Africa. You are in Somalia, you are in Mali, you are in Malawi, in Haiti, everywhere we are, we must recognize that. And that really makes sense for us, wherever we are, to unite, to struggle, to end the control of the United States over Africa and the African nation, because the US is the key force. I know there are struggles in places like Mali, Burkina. We unite for those struggles to get the French out, but we all already know the French are the vassal state. the vassal state of the United States. That's what France is today. France has no independent capacity to launch even a counterinsurgency in the long term, like we're talking about years of counterinsurgency force against revolution anyway. They don't have that capacity. They have to rely on the United States, just like the Belgium in the 60s against Lumumba. They didn't have the capacity to launch an intense counterinsurgency that will last for years. They didn't have that. So it's really significant for all of us, wherever we are, to recognize that, and that the struggle to end the United States domination of the world and over Black community, particularly in the United States, has stopped. So I just want to end to say that's how we unite with the demand made to the white people to stop the FBI's attack on the Uhuru movement, on the chairman of Malisila, on the African People's Socialist Party, on all four unindicted so-called conspirators. We want that to stop. And we want everybody to unite with the struggle for free Africa, a united Africa. And this is the foundation to build a new world. So I appreciate being here again as a panelist. It's a really great event, and I'm convinced we are winning. We are winning. Uhuru.
Thank you, Secretary General Luizy. Very, very profound discussion. And hands off Uhuru. Hands off. Uhuru. So we are now honored to be present by Nancy Mansour, who is the co-founder of Existence is Resistance. Uhuru, Nancy.
Uhuru.
Peace, Uhuru. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. You know, Palestinians, we appreciate anytime somebody acknowledges us and gives us a space to speak, especially when it's oppressed peoples, and, giving us part of your space to be able to express our solidarity and also speak out for our people. First of all, I'm co-founder of Existence Resistance, as you said, and even before my deeper political education on the Black struggle in America, having grown up, in the UK and between the UK and Palestine, we've done a lot of work around Congo and the vulture funds out of New York that were trying to rape the Congo for hundreds of millions of dollars. Shout out to my brother Kambale from DR Congo. And freedom to the Congolese people. But then learning about, a poem by the revolutionary Palestinian poet Samih El-Qasim, who wrote about the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. It didn't start when we started doing this work. Black and Palestinian solidarity. And I say that, where I'm going to speak in a little bit also because there are Black Palestinians, which is a whole nother level of oppression for them. But Black Palestinian solidarity, as far as I've read, goes back to 50s, 60s. We could talk about Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, the Black Panthers meeting with the PFLP, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, in Algeria during the festival in 1969, the Pan-African Cultural Festival. The Black Panthers have always highlighted the Palestinian struggle throughout the 70s, even did a piece on heroic Palestinian women who are the forefront of our struggle. And God bless all of our women in all our struggles, holding it together for all of us. I always say I don't like to take space from we are one, we are in the struggle together, but each of our struggles are different. The Black people have suffered for hundreds of years in this country, and I don't like to take that space, but we are one. There's only one oppressor and one oppressed, and so we stand with you, and there's so many. When I give examples, this is just to show how this system is so intertwined and uses the same tactics against our peoples. When I first saw what happened at the Uhuru Freedom House, it reminded me of the Holy Land 5 also. The way that they're targeted, entrapped, infiltrated. I don't know how many people know about the Holy Land 5, which was one of the largest Islamic organizations in the US prior to them being shut down by the Bush administration in 2001. But I have to highlight them because our brothers who were providing food and medicine for orphans in Palestine from the US here were targeted, and in 2007 had a mistrial on a hung jury, but then retried in 2008. And 3 of those 5 brothers still remain in prison, 2 of them serving 65 years. And so, the way that they repress and target various organizations is pretty much the same. Even our sister Rasmi Yaudi, I should say my elder, one of my mentors, a sister in her 70s who had been a citizen of the US for over 40 years, who got deported a few years back, over something that they had never put anybody in jail for, where they were trying to put her away for 20 years, but marking something on her naturalization paperwork saying she hadn't been in prison, where she had been, everybody in Palestine pretty much has been in an Israeli prison, and nobody really talks about it, especially for her, where she was raped and tortured for years. But yet they did not let the doctors come in and give testimony in the courts here in America, but let the Israelis come in and give testimonies, which just, brings me to say that the same tactics are used by the Israeli and American governments. It's to instill fear in people, and once they label you a terrorist, or use the words terror, it's their language that they use to scare their people, and then to attack. And it's crazy, because when I was watching the videos, I was seeing the comments of people in this country, and it's like, I mean, there's certain people, I'm not, and it's wild, because it's like, it's 2023, like everything is available to you. Everything is available to you. Like, there's no real excuse for ignorance anymore. There's no real excuse for ignorance. And we have to question things like, why is it that the US don't allow any of their citizens to serve in a foreign army except for Israel? They can serve in the Israeli army. Why is that? Why is it they want us to mourn a 27-year-old from Connecticut who just got killed in Jericho, who served in the Israeli army? They want us to mourn him because he got killed. He shouldn't have been there, and shouldn't have been serving in their army. But then they don't want to mourn the the Palestinian American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, who got shot in the neck while doing her job in her own country. I mean, it's double standards all around. The biggest terrorists on this earth are the Israeli and American governments, among others. But the ones that are working together, like the brother just said, they are the ones that are always voting against freedom. They are always the ones voting against anybody, having a right to exist. They are always the ones involved somehow, along with the Brits. Let's not forget them. Always involved somehow, some way. It will lead back to them. And I just want to leave it where we stand 120% with our brothers and sisters in this movement, in their freedom. When people are attacked, the attackers don't get to choose the form of resistance that comes from that. Until people in this country can understand, until they understand that we're pumping, $10.2 million a day in weaponry to Israel, just for weapons from our tax money, that those bullets that murdered, Shireen Abu Akleh, and the 14-year-old Amir Uday yesterday, there's so many to name. There's about 20 Palestinians have been killed in the last week. But yesterday alone, a 14-year-old brother from Kalkilia, we're paying for every bullet, and that's why people should care, because it does directly affect you. And until they understand that resistance is not terrorism, then maybe they can start to understand our fight for freedom. Existence is resistance. That's why we named it what it is. Existence is resistance. Our existence is resistance. We need to uplift the voices of our brothers and sisters being attacked by these governments. We need to stand in solidarity. We need to keep uplifting the voices and the names of all of our brothers and sisters that are behind bars for our freedom. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Really, profound to have you here today. And again, I just want to say that the Uhuru Solidarity Movement unites with the African People's Socialist Party stance in solidarity with the Palestinian people. So next up, I want to turn the mic over to African People's Solidarity Committee Chairwoman Penny Hess.
Uhuru, Uhuru, and victory to the Palestinian people. Uhuru, Uhuru, and hands off Uhuru, hands off Africa. I want to salute Secretary General Luwezi Kinshasa for that amazing, that powerful presentation, and for the leadership that he provides in the African Socialist International. That is an incredible and very important part of the African People's Socialist Party building around the world, including on the continent of Africa, in Europe and in the Caribbean, as well as inside the United States. And it is a great honor to be here today. I want to salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela. My leadership, the only way that there's anything that I could understand about the world as it really is from the leadership of the chairman. I want to salute the African People's Socialist Party, Deputy Chair Onas Dene Yeshitela, and Uhuru Solidarity Movement today. And, you know, I want to say something that the chairman mentioned when he was talking a little while ago, that the work that the chairman has done and the political theory of African internationalism has reconfigured the world. And we're seeing that play out, that the chairman has talked about for probably his whole political life, the crisis of imperialism. And that crisis is deepening every day, and we see it playing out. And that the leadership that Chairman Omali Yeshitela has played is in the analysis of this, in the question of colonialism, and bringing that to the surface, putting that on the agenda again, that makes it a scientific question and shows the unity of oppressed and colonized peoples around the world, and also tells us what we have to do. And that it was the chairman that brought out and made reparations a household word. All of these things we didn't hear before. You didn't hear these things talked about. And as we understand that the ideas, when the ideas grip the masses of the people, it becomes a material force. And that is the world, that is the struggle, the war of ideas that the chairman is taking on right now. And so what we see is resistance that Nancy Mansour was just talking about, just gripping the world. There is resistance everywhere from the colonized peoples, and nothing that the US and Europe can do is stable, is predictable anymore. And we see this new alignment, a deeper alignment of China and Russia. And recently, Russia, Sergei Lavrov said that he made a statement that this is a new period in which in the past they had to be careful about things that they said and did because the US would retaliate, but that today there are new alignments in the world. He said this, there are new alignments in the world that make it not necessary to rely on anything to do with the United States anymore. And that we see this economic front, camp, or whatever we want to call it, that they have called BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, which has created an economic alliance, and that represents well over half of the people, much more than that, actually, the majority of the people on the planet Earth right there. And what they're saying is in this period, with the crisis of US and US validity, just being drained out of the ideas of anybody else, that scores of countries now want to join the BRICS, and they want to break their relationship with the United States economically, and they don't have to put up with this anymore. And that the BRICS organization will be needing to accept these new countries into it. And it was also interesting, I would just say, that China brokered this coming together after a split of Saudi Arabia and Iran, and the US, pundits are like, that's what the US does, China doesn't do that, so, it's stepping in to, become the leadership of the planet. And while these BRICS and these countries are not revolutionary, it still weakens US imperialism. It weakens the colonial mode of production and enables the colonial question and the African resistance, which leads this to grow and build under a situation that is very important. And so, when we look at the world today, we see crisis everywhere. We see war. We see what the US is doing, even though it's hidden all in the Middle East and in Africa, and creating the starvation, bringing war, bringing suffering and starvation and oppression to the people on the planet Earth. This is very, very visible. We see the war that the US wages against African people inside this country, which is something that the white left and so-called anti-war movement has never, ever, ever admitted, that there is a war going on here, that there is a colonial war against African people and indigenous people and Puerto Rican people and Mexican people that doesn't happen to white people. And that we see the climate crisis, as people have talked about, which if you read some of these documents, even from the United Nations, it's like, is there even going to be a world in the next 25 or 50 years? And we see poverty, we see, just this deep crisis happening. And I wanted to say something quickly about how the crisis of imperialism affects a lot who are the subjects of history, who are the colonizers, because there are a lot of white people, especially young white people, who do not have this analysis. And we look at today, what it has meant to be here as North Americans, as white people, as Europeans, as the colonizers, the ability to see a future, to understand what is going on. But the majority of white people right now do not have that. And especially young people, we see that there is this epidemic of loneliness. And, this is supposed to be the highest standard, the highest civilization on the planet Earth. The statistics are something like, especially of young white people, something like 40-50% can say they have no friends, nothing. They live online. They have no friends. They don't even know how to interact with human beings. We see this rising of mental illness, which I would say that, of course, I would be more worried about the people who are not considered mentally ill in this society. But I mean, we are seeing these conditions. I mean, okay, so in the United States, there are 100,000 drug overdose deaths every year, 100,000. There are 140,000 alcohol-related deaths every year. There are 45,000 suicides, but 1.4 million attempted suicides. There are 500,000 people homeless and living on the streets. And and nearly 1/3 of white people report depression and mental illness, not to mention narcissism, all the things that plague white people. And I'm saying that, we have to get out there and recruit. We have to recruit because there is a place. There's something called national suicide. not your body. Contribute your life and your brain to the African Revolution and carry out the strategy that we've been called on to do, to go in and win white people. There is a future, but it's not going to come from the colonizer, and it's not going to come from the colonial mode of production. It's going to come from the African working class in unity with the oppressed and colonized peoples around the world. So I feel very confident. This is called the A Moment of Peril and Promise, Crisis, Colonial Wars, and Humanity's Future. Yes, and the chairman has always said this is a period that is good but dangerous. It's good but dangerous. So let's jump in. Let's take it on. Let's struggle. Our responsibility is to go out there into this morass of all of these contradictions in the white community and say there is a place. We can make our self-criticism to African people and people on the planet Earth. We can take responsibility for what our history is and what we have done and pay reparations. We can do the work, we can organize, and we have a role to play in the building of a new world and the ending of this vicious death-dealing system that exists right now. So I salute the African Revolution, the African People's Socialist Party. The party is winning. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Thank you, Comrade Penny. And again, I want to just express appreciation for this convention. And some of you may not recognize your significance. When we built the African People's Solidarity Committee in 1976, and it was known that this was happening, we got flack from every corner. One of the most ultra-leftist communist organization in the country at the time, the Spartacus League. That's a signal right there, you know Spartacus League, but back in Germany, there's this radical movement, the Spartacus League. That's where this people picked that up. But we've also talked about Haiti, and Spartacus, of course, led this slave revolt against the Romans, and he failed. He terrorized the Romans for a while. They killed him. But in Haiti, there was a slave revolt as well.
Yes.
The first successful slave uprising in the world. The first successful workers' revolution in the world happened right there in Haiti. I got distracted because I mentioned the Spartacus League, and I don't know why they didn't call it the Dessalines League. You understand? Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who led the successful revolution against Haiti, but that's because people were limited in how they could see the world. And the whole colonial mode of production, it does blind sectors of the population. And Comrade Leah, I think it was, talked about this idea of every aspiration, every dream, coming at the expense of freedom and of peoples around the world. And that is a reality that's too often not recognized, because the views that we have of the world is informed by the economic base of a society. And at the moment, Europe, and the process of forming Europe out of this feudal despair, and it was despair, believe me. I mean, you're talking about during feudalism where, what is it, naked and afraid? Well, that was true in much of Europe. I mean, people literally often didn't have clothing to wear. Feudalism was horrible. There was no freedom. There was no democracy. In fact, much of what we deal with in law today and concepts about rule by law is because for the longest period of time in this place they call Europe, it was the divine right of the king. And the people didn't have any rights other than that, which came from the Pope and from the king. And so the part of the struggle against feudalism, by the way, was even the rise of what they call Protestantism. This was an attack on the power of the church, divine right of kings, etc. This was the guy who Martin Luther King Sr. named himself and his son for, Martin Luther, in the treatise, you know, on the church door. So this was a part of a struggle to get rid of feudalism, and out of that came this new world, this new thing. And what came of that was, again, Portugal's attack on Africa, the whole mission of building a single world around a single world economy. And so it's no longer just this city-state in this place that we now call Europe that's doing things. The whole world is now hooked up into a single economy. And from here, what we refer to as society has to change in our brains, because society is no longer some fiefdom in this territory that existed before. It's been connected to this whole global process. And we're all connected together through this process, the first world economy created right there. And it made the majority of the world became increasingly invisible to the colonizer as it was emerging. There was no longer, for example, there's no longer just the Celts and all these other people. Now there's this unification of an understanding, a common sense of sameness emerges. It's the primary thing, the sense of sameness, and its origin comes through the collective participation in slavery and colonialism and a whole new world economy. So now the Celt and all the others become Europeans. And one economy, one consciousness. This is the rise of the white man. There was no such thing as the white man. Before colonial slavery, there was no such thing as a white man. It's impossible for it to have been a white man. How can you be a white man if everybody looks just like you? I'm white, you white, oh, we all white people. No, white people required as a thing that helped to define it is opposite. It's a unity of opposites. It's a dialectical thing that we're talking about. So out of this also, legal systems, institutions, philosophy, ideology, all sprang from this. And I think it was Karl Marx who once remarked that that you can't judge a movement by its own consciousness, right? Can't judge a movement by its own consciousness, no more than you can judge an individual by what he thinks of himself, even though that's cool with me. You understand? But you can't judge a movement. You have to understand what it is that gave rise to this thing that you're looking at in order to make a judgment about what it is for. I'm fighting for civil rights, but there's a whole lot of other things that's in play. I wanted to say that when you look and see, he said, Marx made the point that when the superstructure, the ideas, the legal institutions and things like this come from an economic base of society, and that how people define themselves is response to that economic base, and that you can look at the economic base and see its transformation, and here you can get a sense of what people are talking about. It's this change in the economic base that creates the situation where people fight it out with ideas, ideologically. This is ideology that comes from this kind of superstructure. And it's confusing now because everything is up in the air now. It's nothing as it was just a few months ago. Every day you wake up, this profound transformation that's happening in the world. And this crisis that we're looking at in the social system. It impacts on every aspect of life and even our ideas about ourselves, so that nobody knows who anybody is anymore. And this is the real problem, because if I'm an African, who the hell are you? This becomes a real question. And when you look at this situation, it strikes me that you've got this situation where you don't know who the hell, you don't know who you're talking to. and you got a trillion pronouns right now. And you have put in what pronoun? Me, us, you know, I mean, a whole bunch of things for pronouns. And the problem is, you know, pronoun is a substitute, right? For what? For a noun. What noun? And the noun is the name of what it is that you're dealing with. But if you got the name, if the noun is wrong, then the pronoun is going to be crazy too. So if you name everything wrong in terms of the noun, you find yourself now scrambling because the noun doesn't mean what it used to mean. And I'm an African. If I'm an African, who the hell are you? And I'm saying that the ideological foundation of this country revolves around much of the world, these questions, and that Africans disappeared. When we were forced out of Africa, we disappeared. Europeans, you can go, Comrade Walter Rodney made this statement. He went to the Library of Congress and he looked up Europe, and he can find Europeans all over the world. He looked at Africa, Africans were only in Africa because we had become Jamaicans and we had become Trinidadians and we had become Black Americans. No, we weren't Black Americans. We were all kind of nasty things before we got to Black Americans. And Afro-Colombians and all these other things, Africans just disappeared. You got the damn noun wrong. And so if you get the noun wrong, your pronoun gets messed up too. How you begin to, this substitute that you use to call yourself is messed up too. You can, anyway, I was about to go off my trajectory here, but it's a point that I will make is that there is a crisis of the social system that's also reflected in ideas. And this stuff don't hold water anymore that I'm fighting against racism. And George W. Bush, George, I don't know if you remember George Bush, he makes the statement that they're fighting us because we are good. He's talking about America because we are good. Nobody remembers that? Yeah. And this is how he's talking about the contradiction that the people face. And so you have occupied Palestine that they call Israel, stolen land, stolen territory, come steal the land and do what all thieves do. When you steal something, scratch your name off, right? Used to be Palestine, now it's Israel. Change your name too. You used to be a Russian, used to be from Milwaukee, et cetera, and now you're an Israeli, right? So you call yourself an Israeli, you know, stole Palestine, you call it Israel and act like you've always been there. They be messing up these nouns, and that makes it difficult for you to get to an understanding what it is that you're dealing with. That's why, you know, people can't understand the crisis. Now, a lot of people recognize that something happened in 2014 in this area where Ukraine is located, or Russia. Something happened significant in 2014. And I just remember, I think it was William Jefferson Clinton. You know, he just did, you know, like the happiest dance that you could imagine. People were talking about new world orders, and people were celebrating the end of history. Fukuyama, a really important sort of theoretician for the imperialists, talked about the end of history. And the end of history had come about because Russia, communism was dead, and et cetera, et cetera. So they were celebrating, you know, et cetera. But of course, the reality is that they did not understand the nature of the system itself. They didn't even see the economic crisis that was coming because they couldn't understand that the well-being of what they characterized as Europe rested upon what they were stealing from the rest of the world. So if somebody else is stealing their oil back, taking their oil back, then the price of oil goes up. If there's a crisis in an oil field in Nigeria, the price of oil goes up in Houston, Texas, or right here in Milwaukee, in St. Louis, and what have you. So that's a part of what needs to be understood about the nature of the system. But in 2014, they danced because it looks like the Russian Russia was an insignificant entity. And of course, in 2014, I think that's when they began this war against Russia. Before that, they had made a war against Russia in Afghanistan, which was close to the Russian border too. They inching as close as they can with what they call NATO to the Russian border. They overthrew the government in Afghanistan that had brought freedom, education, all these things for women, free healthcare, all this stuff. They overthrew it, and this was done under the leadership of James Earl Carter, the one who a lot of people like to brag about being the last great and honest president. But Zbigniew Brzezinski, who worked for him, created a strategy to destroy Russia or destroy the Soviet Union by creating this crisis in Afghanistan to draw them in. And that's where you got the modern jihadists comes from Brzezinski. He's the one who organized, or the Americans did, organize them, train them, and what have you, made them killers and sent them back into Ukraine, what have you, back into to Afghanistan. I said Ukraine, Afghanistan. You have to keep up with which war they're fighting at the time. So, but we recognize that the real crisis for the system began in 1917. And that's when the Russian Revolution happened. And that was a Russian Revolution that was pushed into existence through the anti-colonial struggles happening around the world. And this is in 1918 is when you saw all of the colonial powers began to organize against Russia, what they called Soviet Russia at the time. We saw developing subsequent to that, subsequent to this attack on Russia by all of the colonial powers, the emergence there was some kind of rapprochement that appeared in the 1930s after the Second Imperialist World War. And so, you know, they all aligned against Hitler, except they weren't. For the longest period of time, it was only before the US took a long time going into that war, because they wanted to facilitate a process for the communist Russia and fascist Germany, if you will, to destroy as much as they could. And the United States entered that war very, very late in the game. But the fact is, with that war and to redivide the world, which was the Second Imperialist World War, to redivide the world. So I think this is what we saw coming out of that, a treaty. And this treaty created NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It created the United Nations. It created like a lot of the institutions that would democratize the colonial control over the peoples of the world. So the objective was that they would not have to fight and kill each other to make war to redivide the world anymore. They had a parliamentary process that they called the United Nations. It was unjust. It was something that works against most of the peoples around the world. They came up with international law. Much of what we understand as international law came about at that time. So this was something that was pulled together, and it was an approach that the colonizers would not have to fight each other anymore in order to dominate the world. They could do it peacefully among themselves. They wouldn't have to kill each other to make this war. And what we've seen since that time is that for a while now, this bloc was characterized as the Atlanticist bloc. That's why you had North Atlantic Treaty Organization and all of these other entities were part of, and they controlled much of the world. They had a collective kind of consensus among themselves about world domination, and they were able to do that for a long period of time. But it was troubled because even as they had an Atlanticist, international law was constructed by these guys. These guys, before all of Africa, all of Asia, most of the world was living under colonial domination, and then they made what is characterized in the international law that you began to see changing somewhat with the success of anti-colonial revolutions around the world, and then other peoples began to get in there, but it's still unequal. The Security Council was something that was controlled by a handful of mostly white countries for the longest period of time. So it was always unequal, this leadership. But this crisis has challenged this North Atlantic Treaty Organization. There's no even any basis for its existence anymore. It's a North Atlantic Treaty Organization. What the hell are they doing fighting in Asia? And what in the hell are they doing fighting, you know, like in Africa? They are the ones who participated in killing Gaddafi with Hillary Clinton, the great white feminist, you know, who, you know, what we saw, he's dead. This was, and they watched, and they facilitated his murder, and then they watched it, and Hillary watching it on TV, celebrating it, right? So, but the crisis is here. And now the crisis is twofold. You got a crisis internal United States, and it ain't just us. Because that wasn't us scaling the walls at the Capitol on January 6th. That was not Black people. And that's crisis, internal crisis. That's an aspect of the crisis. You got the crisis of Black people, indigenous people who continue to push to try to be free. And you've seen that in rebellions throughout this country, George Floyd and right here in St. Louis with Mike Brown, et cetera, uprisings of people want to be free. And it's a real unstable kind of situation. There's crisis there. Then there's crisis as a consequence of the US no longer being the big hegemon just by itself. Now there's China on the scene, contesting the United States for some of the same resources, politically and economic resources. There's Russia on the scene. Russia, as Comrade Penny just mentioned, just facilitated this agreement between Iran and Saudi Arabia. What makes that important in part is because Saudi Arabia has been a weapon of the United States against the Iranians for a long period of time. And so now this and also Saudi Arabia is involved in trying to enter to this treaty with Israel, the illegitimate state of Israel. You've got Iran being one of the most consistent forces in opposition to Israel. And so the United States trying to facilitate this thing. Through Saudi Arabia, they've killed millions of people, Houthi in Yemen already. This is something that's already going on. So now here is China out of the blue who comes in and makes this deal. This is a real important thing because the other aspect of the crisis is that the United States has struggled to define the world as a contest between not communists and anti-communists, but between the democracies and they call it autocracies. And the United States is the chief hegemon of all the democracies. And yet, as the hegemon of the democracies, it's got this situation. Black people been killed on a regular basis almost every day. Shut it up, keep it from being talked about, because once this is aired, this becomes an important aspect of the discussion, then it exposes that the United States is not the democracy that it claims to be. I have a book here called Opposing Jim Crow. I had thought I would quote from here, but I won't. But the thing about it, well, just this little bit that I think is really important. It says on December 1st, 1958, this is the introduction, amidst the Berlin crisis, U.S. Senator Hubert H. Humphrey had an unprecedented 8-hour-long meeting with Nikita Khrushchev in the Kremlin. Humphrey explained afterward that at one point during their conversation, the Soviet Union, the Soviet leader tore off on a whole long lecture like I wish I could ever make in my life on anti-racialism. Boy, he really gave me a talk on that. Khrushchev's verbosity in speaking anti-racism in 1958, which greatly impressed the US senator, was not a new skill that the Soviet leader had cultivated in the 1950s as a result of Cold War politics. Rather, it was from the 1920s through the 1930s that Khrushchev and other young party officials, with the help of African Americans, learned to speak anti-racism. Here's the Soviets Russia learning to talk about what's happened to Black people from Black people who come from the United States. And Khrushchev is now giving Hubert H. Humphrey, the great white liberal, a lesson on anti-racism, right? They said decades before most American senators even expressed interest in giving speeches on anti-racism, end quote, Soviet authorities used Jim Crow to claim the moral superiority of the USSR and contest America's image as the world's beacon of democracy and freedom. Before the Nazis came to power in Germany, US racism was identified in the Soviet Union as the most egregiously horrific aspect of capitalism, and the United States was represented as the most racist country in the world. Now, this is them. And you talk about a Putin and us. Putin, I'm sure Putin went to some of these classes that were taught all over the Soviet Russia at the time, or his parents did. And I think it's really important. 1928, the Soviet Union had, along with the Communist International, led by the Soviet Union, had declared that African people in the United States constitute an oppressed nation. Not only are we an oppressed nation, according to them, we are the leadership of oppressed nations in the world. And so this was their stance then, 1928. That's when 1920 is what I'm talking about. And I'm fighting a battle in 2022. We're fighting a battle in 2023 now that somehow the Russians told us and taught us how to fight for, and that we needed to fight for Black people and Black power. So I just wanted to say that, and there is a profound crisis here, and a manifestation of that crisis is the existence of the African People's Solidarity Committee. It has now put the African Revolution behind enemy lines. It has now had this very organic, this is not some static thing, but organic force growing every day. That's Black power in white face, that's talking about reparations, that's talking about genocide having been committed against African people, et cetera. And this is the critical factor that we are dealing with right now. This is such a critical thing that we're involved in, because we now have created a situation where the world can be united in a common struggle against a common enemy, as Comrade was talking about from Palestine. It is one enemy that's fought on different fronts. It is one mode of production that connects all of us in different ways, et cetera. Palestine is stolen land, stolen identity. It's free Palestine, long live Palestine. That has to be our view. And it's a white nationalist settler state. And people get punished for making that statement, just like you get punished for making any kind of statement that supports the liberation of the people, because the United States government, as Comrade Louisa said, is opposed to all peoples trying to be free. They killed the movement, they killed Malcolm X, they killed Martin Luther King, they actually wounded, captured, and then killed Che Guevara. All around the world, that's the kind of thing that we've been looking at, and that's the kind of thing we have to break free of. So that's why we can't just roll over and die. And that's why you are so important, because the victory here is going to be that they have to come through all the people to get to us. You understand? The victory is that the people know what the hell is going on, that you know what we stand for, what we do, that we are a transparent organization. This is being something that's going straight to an FBI or whatever you call it they receive to get this information, because it's transparent. It means open to anybody. Our records are open to anybody. Our newspaper says exactly what we say, and we write books about it, put it forward. So you don't have to have steal our computers and steal this and that to find out what we believe in. I want them to be as transparent as we. And so our objective has to be to take the struggle. It's easier to find out what we believe in, what we stand for, than it is to get Hunter Biden's computer. You understand? Yeah. So yeah, we're transparent, and that's the thing that we want everybody to know, and we want you to help get us forward, because what happens is that Zuckerberg and the rest of them are working to make sure that we stay in this silo. They won't even allow us to be on Facebook. They make us faceless on Facebook. It's not just the shadow banning and stuff like that, but some of the fundraising things that we were doing, they shut it down. We can't do it anymore. So the thing is that we've been sanctioned, as Cuba has been sanctioned, as Venezuela has been sanctioned, as Zimbabwe has been sanctioned, as various other countries and peoples around the world have been sanctioned, Afghanistan sanctioned, but I don't think it's working anywhere. So I just wanted to say those things, and hopefully that you would join with us in a very intense and consistent way of hands off Uhuru, hands off Uhuru. Uhuru comment, yeah.
Thank you so much for that profound discussion, Chairman. So we have about 10 minutes and we can open it up for some questions from the audience here in St. Louis and also questions from or comments from anybody online.
One thing I want to say is that the Democratic Party can't distinguish itself or Biden from DeSantis.
Right.
Listen, because DeSantis is saying you cannot teach about Black people, you cannot say anything about slavery, you can't bring up any of this stuff. That's what that's the thing is. And they're doing this to schools all over this country right now. And then it's exactly what they attack us for doing.
Yeah.
So there's supposed to be this big difference in the DeSantis and Trump-like forces and the Democratic Party and Biden. But there ain't a dime's worth of difference. That's a point I would make, you know, because that's the same thing that that Biden and his organizations are saying to his Justice Department. You can't teach that stuff. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
You mentioned several times about the war to redivide the world.
Yeah.
For people who might think that the redivision of the world was just to make lines on a map.
Yeah.
Can you say that it related to redistribution of resources, et cetera?
Yeah, this whole thing about war. I mean, we get there that this was the war to end all wars, the war of democracy and all these things, but the powers were colonial powers. All of them were colonial powers. And when we say it's a war to redivide the world, it's like the mafia. It's like the Sopranos, you know, they don't like the last deal they got in terms of who gets what. And so they end up fighting this war to redivide it, to get a new deal, to get a new division. In 1884 and 85, Europeans met in Berlin, Germany. Berlin, we keep coming back to Berlin, went to Berlin, Germany, for the purpose of dividing up Africa. And then meeting to divide Africa because they were potentially going to war with each other, who was going to get what. And so that was one of the first, it's called the Berlin Conference, one of the first times. All of the names you see on African, on the map about supposed to represent that, they created those. They drew those borders and names and then called us countries and nations, different nations and things like that. This is part of the whole struggle. And so Germany got part of it. Belgium, that's where the Belgian Congo comes from, etc. Different entities, I mean, got parts of it. You got something called Cameroon, you know about that, I mean, which is Portuguese for shrimp. And there's a false national consciousness that has come along with that. So people running around calling themselves Cameroon and they ain't no shrimp any more than Black people in this country are Americans. In fact, America was born out of the process of slavery and colonialism. And I'm offended every time I hear somebody say they found some site, some archaeological site of Native American from 2000. Was no America 2,000 years ago. What are you talking about? This is something that you just created and named for yourself. You know what I mean? But the redivision of the world, this is what these forces fought for, both in the First Imperialist World War, and they fought other wars. You can see how the maps of Europe had changed at different times. They're fighting to redivide the loot and the world's resources. They suck in the blood. And for a while, even America and France, which this would have been perhaps even as recent as the 80s, were almost at warfare with each other through proxies and who was going to get what parts of Africa. And that still happens in different ways. So that's what we're talking about. That's what they want. They want a better deal. In fact, the Second Imperialist World War, where German figured so big, and it was part of Germans' response to the bad deal they got in the First World War, when they created the League of Nations. This was an inspiration from Woodrow Wilson, who was the president of the United States at the time, but he didn't win the Congress to it. So this First World War redivide the world. That's why it's never made any sense to you. When you've gone to school, they told you this war was started because somebody assassinated somebody. Just never could figure out how whole countries and all this murder happening all over the world because of that. It was a struggle to redivide the world. And Lenin and the Bolsheviks refused to participate in that war. In fact, Lenin was called a traitor because for the same reason I guess they're calling us traitor. I say they, I'm talking about people like there's a white left that says there's something wrong with us because we going to a demonstration, we went to one that they said was the right wing. So anyway, those kinds of struggles happen, and Lenin refused to participate in that, and this struggle to redivide the world, and by doing so, united with the struggles of Africans and other colonized people all around the world, and he spoke in the interest of the workers of the world, and that resonated too, because all of us workers, you know what I mean? Yeah, all of us have been workers. So that's what the wars have been for. They've been to redivide the world, to take the loot. They've been dissatisfaction with the deal they got the last time out, and so they say, let's fight it out again. They send their concierge, what they call them, secretaries of state, and things like that. They have these meetings and et cetera, and they decide whether or not they're going to have to fight or not. And as you know, I think one U.S. general has already stated that they're going to have to fight China within the next couple of years. And China has also come out and said that it's never going to be the way it used to be. That in terms of the U.S. system, and Russia has come out and said that too. And we're in the smack dab in the middle of that. And our struggle is to find our way through this to win our freedom. And we wouldn't go through this stuff to become slaves of anybody. We're not slaves for Russia, anybody. We're not slaves. We refuse to be slaves, and that's the problem. Not that they think we're slaves of Russia, but we refuse to be their slave. And like Zimbabwe, long time ago, we are our own liberators. We are our own liberators. Uhuru. Yeah. Was that helpful life? Yeah, okay, good. Yeah. Sure.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you,
Sure,
Chairman. Penny.
sure.
Thank you, Nancy.
Does that come in, Louisa? Secretary?
Chairman, I just want to speak to that question.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't. Let me just get a view. Right. Okay, it's working out. Yeah, I just want to unite with the explanation, Chairman, I just provided. And I think this question of redividing the world is profound, and it will not happen as it was 1945 or 1914 and 18. In fact, as the chairman rightly said in one of the meetings, if Garvey won his struggle for African national liberation, the division of the world would not have happened the way it happened in 1914, 1918. But I want to say also, we know the United States is using this crisis basically to deepen its control over Europe. But even within that, there are contradictions, because the rise of the Germany budget by over at least $100 billion, that's huge. This will have consequences. Japan also is in the process of being rearmed. It does not mean Germany and Japan will always accept to be the vassals of the United States. So these basically, you have crisis, in germination. You also have the regional power, like in terms of if you take like South America, you have Brazil and other countries, Venezuela and others. They're coming to some kind of alliances, economic integration. They're talking about all these put limitation on what the United States can do in terms of trying to redivide the world based on its own interest. And if you go to a place like the Middle East, the chairman talks about just the peace or the agreement that China has facilitated between Iran and Saudi Arabia. This has huge consequences too. It means the possibility of the United States pushing for war in Yemen could be limited. It means peace is possible. It also means in Lebanon, the possibility also of having an elected government, because if Saudi Arabia and Iran don't agree over Lebanon, you cannot have a peaceful development in that country. But if Lebanon and if Iran and Saudi Arabia agree, the possibility also of some kind of peace taking place in Lebanon is possible. But one of the most important aspects also of that peace agreement is that China is pushing for its interest. We all know about the what do you call it, the Silk Road or One Belt One Road, because China needs the One Belt One Road to go through those regions, particularly Lebanon, Syria, and so on. And this also put limitation on what the United States can do in terms of dividing the world. So they're losing. That's definitely the case. And if you take Asia, compared to Africa, for example, we know the trade between Africa constitutes less than 20%. Most of the trade is between outside forces, the EU, United States, China, everybody else, but not within Africans ourselves. But if you go to Asia, at least 58% of trade is between the Asian countries, and this will continue to grow. And all this will put limitation on what the United States can do, because economically they don't need the United States or England or France, because the trade is happening within that region, India, China, and the rest of it, and this also is a part of this change in the relationship of power, between countries in the world. And that's why rightly the question, as Chairman just said, what we doing? And we know, we hear this talk from multipolar world, but that's a change for those who have power. We don't have power, so we need power. But as you know, the power for Africa is anti-colonial power at its foundation, destroy colonialism as mode of production. That is really qualitative change that we want the whole world to do. That's why African internationalism is so fundamental. One Africa, one voice. And we want that voice to be heard throughout the planet. We don't want a world based on colonialism as a mode of production. The louder that voice becomes, we want that to be the loudest voice on the planet. We want everybody to hear us. And that's the basis to build a new world. And that's why we cannot be defeated. The future is in our hands. So we just have to, build wherever we are so we can make that a reality. So we're.
Yeah.
Group. Thank you again to all of our panelists. This was really just a really wonderful panel and discussion. And turn it back over to our MC, Sarah Uhuru.
Hi, excellent. So we are nearing the end of our first day of the convention. And I have learned so much. I know that I see some heads shaking back there. Absolutely, some heads nodding. I know I'm not the only one. So before our last panel of the day, I want to invite up a very, very talented poet. Yep. Okay. We want to invite up a very, very talented poet named Grace Jones, who is also a graduate of the doula program. So Grace, come on up.
Hi. Hi, my name is Grace Jones, and I'm here and I stand proudly with Amalia Shatella and the Uhuru movement. I am also a part of ABDEP, All African People's Development Empowerment Project, building the Black Project, to create a defense team that focuses on agriculture, education, healthcare, disaster relief, and preparedness. If anything occurs, we want to be able to know how to and what to do, especially how to protect our families and keep them safe and our loved ones too. I'm also a poet, And I would love to share some spoken word with you today.
Well,
Bite the bullet. Only if we can bite the bullet and alleviate the stress. Alleviate the stress, I said. Now your mama's picking out a black dress to dress in. You laying down, dressed up in a casket. Her black shades will hide the last goodbyes of you. Her cries will be forevermore. T-shirts RIP in your name. Your face will appear on it like it's the latest trend. But tell me, how did dying become so fashionable?
well,
Suitable for Black men to savage their life, to be the one behind the gun, but you are the one in front of it. You wasn't made to be target practice. Tell me, how did it get like this? Tell me why the hit didn't miss. You became another sad statistic, so tragic, ain't it? How did visions of you become candlelight visuals and balloon release ceremonies? Selling plates to cover the cost for the funeral service. No life insurance, not everybody's nervous, clenching their pockets and their purses. A child left fatherless with just a picture of you. But how will he know that a real father's love is to be shown, because life is so precious? And you only have one life to live, so don't be reckless. Ain't you better than that? I know that you are. I know you wasn't given the opportunity to shoot for the stars or shoot your best shot. Growing up in an environment with trauma and drugs, and give me all you got. Body found on a vacant lot. 3 shots to the head, left dead. Breaking news, and all Elliot Davis is saying is you paid for it. Yeah. See, media will get you famous for your lifeless body. Victimized by accessible weapons, compounded with charges of genocidal conspiracy out to destroy you. Your grandmother adored you. This is not what she prayed for, as God to have mercy on your soul for. Thought you learned your lesson, son. No class was in session when it came to you. You was dismissible and disregarded. You only wanted your father there to protect God and guard you, but he wasn't around you to fill in those holes, to drop seeds in you and watch you grow. So you became angry and confused with yourself, silently crying out for help, but no one was around, you see. You picked up a gun because Grand Theft Auto wasn't fun no more. You wanted to play the game in real life, not knowing you get real life in prison with no parole. And that's just how it goes in the neighborhood.
yeah.
No Sesame Streets. Red light, green lights became red light, blue lights from police squad cars, and gun violence is the norm, and silence is the G code, because snitches get stitches. Everybody asking who did this, but ironically, no one knows. Now you're all dressed up, laying down in a casket, dead. I'm just asking, can we bite the bullet and alleviate the stress? Alleviate the stress, I said. That's that piece. What I got time to do? One more? We are just a fraction of the cost. 40 acres and a mule, I never received it. The American dream, I never achieved it. I was barricaded in the fog. The smoke gets thicker, controlled by fade, sticky like glue on my fingers. Blood on the street beat the eyes of me. So do I add my stain? I don't. Shots to the brain, and I get why. As I take my clothes off, my black skin still remain. What are my choices? What do I choose? I have nothing to lose but my life, right? Nah, y'all got life fucked up. I bring life. My womb bring forth your threats. My sons and daughters are chosen by the sun and not their skin. They will know of your race and will win. They will know you by name. Checkers and chess, is it all a game? Nation and generational curses with blood stains on your hands. We will never forget. We will glorify when the day will come. Fuck equality, we want revenge. Our ancestors are rising to beat on the beast, feasting after the ones that beat us, feasting after the ones that raped us, feasting after the ones that threaten us with a lie. Pills so big to swallow, yet we force down the pains of sorrows with no water to drink. We thirst for our freedom, shackled and chained, and you ignored our cries. Your baby's drinking milk from my breast, but mine stripped away to be sold to the highest bidder. So how do you figure that we must forget or turn our heads to injustice? But it's just us in the streets protesting police brutality. The reality about it is you can't hide it in your titles. We know you by name. You are identified as the judge. You are identified as the jury. You are identified as the prosecuting attorney, as the nurse and the doctor, spilling our blood, taking organs from dead Black bodies. And what's to investigate? Well, you murder us on tape for the whole world to see your hate. And then you try to debate how we deserved it all. I'm saying land of the free, home of the brave, America, America, home of a Black man's grave. Thank you. That's that piece.
I can't. I thought I was speechless after the chairman. One more round of applause. Can we just? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. All right. Before I forget, oh my gosh, we've got some exciting announcements on our appeal. Okay, so are y'all ready for this? Robert, $25 and $300. Ken and Jan, $200. Allie A, $925. Woo! Janice, $2,000. Allison, $100. Stephanie, $50. Janine, $50. That leaves us at 1,340. That's it. That's all we got, folks. What? Who's gonna do it? Who's gonna donate just that 1,340? Do we have anybody online or in person who can just? And 100 from Ruby. That's 1,240 left then. 1,240. So let's see. What's that mental math? 18,760. Yeah, 18,760 we have raised. Unbelievable, folks. Unbelievable. Okay, so we have reached what I believe is the one of the final segments of the day. So the next panel we have is called Stop the Legal Lynching of Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And it's unsurprisingly going directly to the heart of the conversation that we've been having all day. So this is very exciting. We've got a loaded panel here. You will be hearing from Chairman Omali Yeshitela, the chair of the Hands Off Uhuru campaign, Mwezi Odom, Director of Agitation and Propaganda, Akile Anai, Chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, Penny Hess, and Alderman of St. Louis's 18th Ward, Jesse Todd, Representative of the Green Party, Susan Armstrong, and Chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, Jesse Neville. And again, just to continue to diversify the emceeing today, I'm going to call up Brendan here to MC this panel. Brendan. Let's go, Brendan.
All the panelists and joining us up here. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, I'd like to call up all of our panelists. If you'd like to use the podium. Yeah, so I'll bring you in first. We have, I think we still need a chair. Maybe we can scoop this over a little bit.
Do we have the? We need another one. I can make it without a table. I can just sit over here and yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Take that place. Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Uhuru. So, right, thank you, Sarah. So I'm just gonna get right on into this. So again, our panel, Stop the Legal Lynching of Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And our first panelist I want to introduce has been leading the counteroffensive. Without her, I mean, we wouldn't be where we are today. We wouldn't be having such a successful counteroffensive. So chair of the Hands Off Uhuru campaign, Chair Moise.
When I say hands up, you say Uhuru. Hands up. Hands up. When I say hands up, you say Africa. Hands up. Hands up. Uhuru, comrades. Uhuru. Well, I just want to begin by introducing myself. My name is Mwezi Odom, and I am the chairperson of the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa Defense Campaign. And it is just a sincere honor to be here today on the ground in St. Louis, ground zero in so many ways. And I just really want to salute the profound leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who, again, we would not be here. That is very clear. I want to salute Deputy Chair Onizane Yeshitela, because we would not have these institutions to defend if it weren't for the leadership and the relentless, struggle of our leaders. And I really want to appreciate everybody who has come here today. I want to salute the leadership of Solidarity, African People's Solidarity Committee Chairwoman Penny Hess, Chair Jesse, and just all the comrades for just a remarkable day one. This just day one of this convention. I also want to appreciate our attorneys who you will hear more from and meet tomorrow at our event. But the purpose of this campaign is to raise the resources, because we want to make sure that we do not go another day without having what we need to be able to secure what is needed to defend our leaders and to put the United States on trial, as we have said. So I just wanted to open up with that. So I have a PowerPoint. There we go. Thank you, comrade. That is pulled up already. And again, just want to say that, as you know, on July, so you saw what happened, right? On July 29th, the FBI, we showed the video earlier, but showed up at 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. in St. Louis and St. Petersburg, Florida, with laser sights, on the chest of the chairman, as we know, was an assassination attempt. We cannot downplay that and see that as anything else. They were looking for any moment or any little thing to use as an excuse to assassinate the, chairman. We understand that, as we know, they stole countless items, used flashbang grenades, created mass destruction, hid security cameras to hide the destruction of their theft. And we have to understand that because they were not successful in silencing and neutralizing this movement on July 29th, they had to come up again with these bogus charges. And here we are again today as another profound stance that this campaign is going to win and this campaign is going to grow. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So next slide. Sorry, comrade. There we go. So again, on July 29th, they named 4 unindicted co-conspirators, as you can see. And as the chairman has said, they had to go into the white community as well, because we have, as we say, white or black power in whiteface through the, and which is what you can see today with the solidarity movement and this remarkable convention. So I just wanted to say that one thing that the chairman has talked about countless today is about the fight for fighting for freedom as illegal, right? And we've all made the pledge today that we are, as we say, unindicted co-conspirators proudly, right? And we are also fighting for what we understand in the African People's Socialist Party as democracy, which is self-determination, the highest form of democracy, which is self-determination for African people. And I want to just really appreciate all of the the chairman just knocked colonial law out in every aspect on today's, during today's presentations. And I think it's really important to understand that when you fight and when you stand on the side of this campaign, you're on the right side of the question, every question that has been raised. So these are 4, just 4, but again, they have indicted and they have spread this wide, threat of indictments to many others in our movement. So next slide. Uhuru. So again, we understand that this attack against African People's Socialist Party didn't just happen on July 29th. 27 days before, they attacked the Uhuru House in St. Petersburg, Florida. Somebody in broad daylight showed up outside with a military-style flamethrower and torched the African flag, the red, black, and green flag that hangs proudly outside in the Black community in St. Pete. This happened in broad daylight. It was clearly an attack. And if you ask the St. Pete police, investigations are still underway, and this is a misdemeanor, and all these other ways in which the colonial state will continue to, show that they are behind this, right? Next slide. And again, then on September, so just, like days, months after this attack, we had a petition that was going around through through one of our organizations, charging the United States with genocide. 130,000 signatures, African people all around the world signed this petition, and this was wiped clean from change.org, completely wiped clean. And we want to make sure that people know that change.org is working with the FBI. Next slide. On October 31st, one of our members who is here today of our movement was arrested on these false charges saying that he was making terroristic threats, only to find out that after hours of waiting and waiting and waiting at the police station, was then called in to say, oh, you know what, it wasn't really about those threats. We just want to hear about, what do the people think? Trying to get more information about how the community is responding to these attacks. Well, we see what the community is responding to. So we just want to say, again, this was another attack on the movement. And then in December, we heard threats of indictments, right? This was very serious. Thousands of people knew about this, but hundreds of people came out to our meeting and showed their support because, again, we are expecting indictments in early 2023. And, here we are. Deputy Chair showed this video earlier about the church that was burned right across the street from the chairman's home. I'm going to move through these a little quickly. Also on February 14th, as you know, this is how the colonizers show their love by revoking this grant with Black Power 96. And then again, we can go past this, but again, the chairman has said, and what the chairman has been saying since day one, we can see that the crisis of imperialism is also revealing, right? In colonial news, you will hear people, trying their best to explain what is happening in this world, but the chairman has said it best, and the chairman and the theory of African internationalism says it the right way. But we want to make sure that people understand that what you're seeing out there, these are reflections of the relentless, leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, and this is why we came under attack. Again, we talked about, what we can say is that we are, seen as these politically, whatever they want to say, exposed persons, right? Because Deputy Chair just laid out all the ways in which these domestic economic sanctions are trying, are another attempt to cripple our movement and cripple the stability of the African liberation struggle and our ability to build our own liberated African economy. Next slide. So we want to, let's go to the next slide. So we want to call out again, those from Regents Bank, some of the faces behind Regents Bank who are behind this attempt to again exit this over 20-year relationship with this program, with this organization, the African People's Socialist Party and the Black Power Blueprint. So you can see their names up there: Leroy Akinwade, John Bowles, who is a former FBI agent working for Regents Bank, and John Turner, the president. We want everybody to know that we have a plan, and we're going to talk more about that. Maybe we won't have time today, but if we do, then I will talk about it. And if not, on tomorrow's meeting, you will also continue to hear more about how we can fight back against Regents Bank, how we can show our undying support for and disgust, right, for this attempt to exit these types of relationships and to get behind the United States and their vicious attacks. So again, they will use real people, right, to turn against, turn them against us. So we have a counteroffensive, right? And we call it this because, as the chairman has said, we are not retreating, we are building. And we want people to understand that when you join and when you support the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa campaign, you unite with our principles of unity. At the front, on the table, you will see there's brochures. Open that up, take a look. And if you unite with any of those principles, sign the petition. There's a petition that could be circulating right now. If we can get that going around the room. If you have not signed the petition, please sign it. Show that you, just even at the least, that you denounce the FBI, period. You should sign that petition, all right? So I'm gonna move quickly through this part, but we just wanna, again, we say hands off the anti-colonial activity of the African People's Socialist Party. And since the attacks happened, we had hundreds of people from around the world come out and show their support. If you go to our website, you will see our endorsers. If you want to endorse this campaign, you can go and do that as well. Again, we say you cannot stop Uhuru. We have, what you just heard was from Secretary General Owezi, who is located in London. Just today, they were outside of the stadium, the Arsenal Stadium, calling out Paul Kagame, in the Congo, right, for the horrendous, murder, right? Colonialism comes in all faces and all forms. And this Hands Off Uhuru and the work of the African People's Socialist Party continues to build front so that we can get the word out and that Africa can have a voice. For once, we see African people having the ability to speak for ourselves and our own interests, right? And so the African People's Socialist Party has always been very clear about who they are here to defend: the African working class, the workers of the world. And I really want to just emphasize that this is international, right? This is an opportunity for us to be able to, as we say, touch one, touch all, right? So I just want to really salute the comrades on the ground, Comrade Tafari Mugeri and Louise Kinshasa. And you'll also see we have Comrade Janelle Owens, who's in Jamaica, and Comrade Alex Morley, who's in the Bahamas. These are other comrades who are building this front and in the Caribbean. And I didn't even mention all the other fronts that are also building in West and East Africa as well. Uhuru, comrades. So we're gonna kind of skip through some of these slides, comrade, but I do want to just acknowledge a lot of the media, and we really want to appreciate those who have taken the time to cover and to share and reshare all of the ways in which this campaign has been leading the fight back. We want to give a special shout out to M1 of Dead Prez, who has shared the video, who has shared our events, and who is a close, tie and friend of the movement as well. So shout out to you, comrade. And we have Jesse Todd here, Alderman Jesse Todd, who is on our panel. And he may speak more to this, but I really just want to salute you, Alderman Jesse Todd, for your relentless struggle. We were able, yes. And everybody in your, yeah. in your packets, you will see the resolution. The Dred Scott City of Refuge resolution, which was part of our counteroffensive to let the city of St. Louis know that we see and that they have to take a stand against what happened, because there is no way that the FBI just came in here on their own. They had the cooperation of the city of St. Louis. When Deputy Chair tried to make phone calls to call the comrades, the phones were jammed. It is, we have to make sure that people know that the city of St. Louis was implicit was complicit in this attack. So Alderman Jesse Todd led a fierce struggle and brought the people to these, public meetings. And we're not done yet with the fight. So we just want to kind of leave that out there, but I just really want to salute you. And this was part of our counteroffensive. I want to just wrap up by telling people what you can do. Because, as I said, we do need the resources to be able to raise what we need for this campaign. But in order to stay connected, we want everybody to go to handsoffuhuru.org and click the emergency response tab. If the US government lays a finger on the chairman, on any member of the Uhuru movement, we have to be able to mobilize immediately. Uhuru. They already did it once with with these economic attacks. And you might have received a text message about that. This is why it's very important. So if you have not signed up, put your hand up if you have signed up. I want to concretely see who has signed up for the emergency response. Okay, that's great. Okay, so I can't call anybody out except for a few people. If you haven't, go to the website and sign up for the emergency response and tell a friend. Uhuru. Uhuru. All right. So on our website as well, on the emergency response tab, you will also learn about what to do in terms of the actions that we want to take against Regions Bank. We want to organize call-ins. We want people to be outside of Regions Bank. We want you to pass out a flyer to every single person walking into Regions Bank, letting them know, if you have an account with Regions Bank, withdraw your money, find a new place, and you let them know why, right? And people have already been doing that. We want to just say that we will have more to say on this, but these are the types of ways in which we have to let anyone know that if you are complicit with the FBI, we see you and we will wage this counteroffensive because the African People's Socialist Party does not retreat. We build, right? So we want you to donate to this campaign. So far, with your resources and with your support, we have been able to raise $167,552. Yes. Uhuru. I want to really salute the comrades and the leaders in the Hands Off Uhuru committee and our donors. I just cannot overstate that enough. And again, we have to raise $277,500 in order to secure the legal resources for this fight back. So it's very important that we reach this milestone. We are close to our 100,000 to go milestone, and we know we can get there. But this is a very important aspect of this fight back. We can provide the political education, we can provide all that, but we have to raise the money. There is no, there's no playing around that. Uhuru. So I think I have like seconds left. There we go. Okay. So sign the petition, volunteer, and you can do all this by going to the website. There's also a sign up sheet back there. If you have skills in, any type of skills that you have that you want to lend back to this fight back, please do, sign up in the back. Again, you can find us on Facebook, and we have some events that are coming up. You can find those on our website. But tomorrow, I do want to remind everybody, if you have not registered for the Meet the Lawyers tomorrow, which will conclude this dynamic conference of USM, we will be able to meet the Uhuru legal team, many of them that are here. So please sign up, please join us, get here on the ground and meet us online. So I will leave it there, but I will say hands off Uhuru. Fist up. Uhuru.
Thank you so much for that, Chair Mwezi. Hands off Uhuru. Okay. Next, kind of the subject of this panel, to kind of bring some perspective into everything, the importance of this fight, and what really this is all about. The leader of the African People's Socialist Party, the unindicted co-conspirator, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And
Uhuru, thank you so much. I think that that we are seeing the response to this attack on our party and our revolution. And I really want to say that we are looking at what can be characterized as a legal lynching by any other name. The fact is we are not guilty of committing any crime, even according to their law, which is not to say that we respect their law. We respect their guns. We respect their power at this time as compared to our power and the power of the people. But we have not violated the law because we know that we got a lot of work to do, that what we have to do is fight for the democratic space that Black people fought for and carved out in this country ourselves. There's nobody, they charge us, the Russians haven't told us to vote, but nobody in this country fought harder and for the right to vote, for universal suffrage than Black people. And to the point that our churches were bombed, children killed, leaders assassinated and what have you, that's who we've been all along. So the thing is that we refuse to move from the democratic space. We fought for that, we won that. The fact that we live in a country today that people like to brag did not go fascist with McCarthy and other things like that. The reason that they couldn't shut the society down, even if they murdered people, they chased the Communist Party USA underground, but the reason they could not shut it down was Fannie Lou Hamer, was Black people were fighting for civil rights, democracy all around this country. That's where the movement went. It wasn't a struggle against fascism, it was a struggle against colonialism for the rights of Black people. And that's the thing that helped to define what democracy, quote unquote, looks like in this country today. The victory is won by African people. So I really think that it's important, for us to understand that. That's the essence of whatever is characterized. Black people did that from slavery, you name it. We have been the ones who forged in the fight for freedom. There has been no better defined struggle for freedom in this country than what has happened with Black people. No Russians, Black people, because of our conditions. So that's part of the story that we have to tell. And that's part of the story that has become a part of a trial that they will put us on. And so a point that I think is really important for us to understand. And it also is important for you to understand that we didn't commit a crime. So if we didn't commit a crime, why the hell are we under the threat of indictment? Why do 5 o'clock in the morning, you saw some of the video there, actually knocking down doors to serve a search warrant, not for murderers, not for rapists, et cetera. They said they wanted to serve a search warrant and they had to do this, but we didn't commit a crime. And the fact is that they've had materials that they stole from us for months now, for half a year or so. Yet they still are offering a $10 million reward for the person who they said is the one who's been indicted in Russia, for anybody who can turn on some information on him and us. Now you stole my damn computer. Now if you weren't gonna get the information when you stole the computer, just give the damn computer back. You understand? They stole a cell phone, they stole all of this material, and they asked somebody if we'll give you $10 million if you snitch. The problem is there ain't nothing to snitch about. That's their problem. That's their problem. But the fact is they rely on the susceptibility of people in this country to this whole notion that Black people are so stupid the Russians have to tell us what to do. So that somebody they call white has to tell us what to do. And they rely on that. And they rely also on an assumption of isolation of the struggle of Black people. So that, for example, when they killed Malcolm X, you didn't see white people rising up and involved in struggle. You didn't see that even with King. Black people did and what have you. But now what we are creating is a situation where people clearly understand the connection of the attack on the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement and the future of freedom for everybody in the world. And so we've broken down some of those ideological barriers that makes it possible for people to recognize in a colonial mode of production, you are connected to this struggle too, that if you want freedom, this is the way. We say to you and to everybody that you have to fight for Black power. Because what we're looking at is when you look at the oppression of white women, Black power didn't do that, white power did that. It did it in the process of consolidating itself. You look at the exploitation of the workers' class, That's white power that did that. When you look at the oppression of homosexuals, and white power did that. We are opposed to white power. We've been opposed to white power before came out of the closet and came out of the kitchen. We were opposed to white power. So what I'm saying is that if you want to end it all, if you want to end that oppression, end that exploitation, join the struggle for Black power. It is a deadly enemy to white power, and this is why we were attacked on July 29th. But it's also really remarkable the existence of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement under the leadership of the African People's Solidarity Committee. That's really remarkable. It's a real changing of the game now, that they have to come to the white community to attack Black people, to attack Black power in whiteface. And the other thing about it is that they don't always know us when they see us now. They don't always know us when they see us, unless we want them to know who they're looking at. They don't know who the hell they're looking at now. And I think that's extremely important too, don't you? Yeah, so white people can go places that Black people can't go to. But Black people can go to those places if we come with a white face. So I think it's important to recognize this. So our struggle, what's really crucial about this is to break down this loyalty, the most asinine kind of loyalty that white people have to this system. So there's no absolute unity now with the colonial power. It's not absolute. There's some who still do it, but the thing is, as I talked earlier, that there's a crisis internal to this country too that is breaking down, that nobody believes in this stuff. And you might not know that you are not the only ones who think what you think because you get shadow banned, because you can't see anybody else, because they siloed the discussion, they control the discussion, Zuckerberg and the rest of them. So you might not know that. But the reality is that they are concerned because this thing is breaking down on all fronts, not just it's breaking down internationally, that they cannot determine the narrative around Ukraine. Most of the people in the world disagree. I mean, I'm not just saying this, that they say that. Most of the people in the world disagree with that narrative. So I want to say that what we are doing is fighting for democracy. And I want us to be clear on that. And I want us to say the highest expression of democracy is self-determination. How the hell can you say it's the democracy when the people cannot experience self-determination? So when we say we are fighting this case, we are fighting these charges, it's because we recognize that freedom is illegal. It's illegal. So what the hell am I supposed to do? If they say it's illegal to be free, so I said, well, damn, want to be free, but the law says I can't, so what the hell, you understand? No. And so what we're doing is we're pushing this issue of freedom. And I'm not asking Biden or the Justice Department or the Pentagon or any of them to join the African People's Socialist Party. I'm not asking them to become African internationalists. I'm not asking them to believe what I believe about Black people and about colonialism. I'm asking them to believe in what they say they believe in. That's where the struggle is. I'm not trying to convert them to us. I'm trying to convert them to them. You understand? So you say you believe in free speech, you believe in freedom of assembly, you put it in the Constitution and actually have these glorified bills and stuff that represent who you're supposed to be, and yet you're attacking us. And then the thing is that's so helpful in terms of this fight back, we turn it so that every attack they make on us exposes them. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. This is not the case like in the 1960s where they can define and narrow this discussion that they're just killing members of the Black Panther Party. Or they're killing members of this extreme group over there that's isolated from the rest of the world, that's existing in isolation. We're not isolated anymore. African internationalism busts down the doors. The existence of you as the members of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement have busted that up. We're not isolated anymore. And so we have this whole movement now. And that makes it necessary for them to come and get us. They got to come through you. They got to come through you. And I think that's a critical development in the struggle that we are looking at today. So they could kill Malcolm, they could kill Fred Hampton, grotesque way. Everybody knew what they did to Fred. They drugged this Kool-Aid and then came in the house at 4 o'clock in the morning, shot their way in, killed Mark Clark, who was sitting on security. And then they had floor plans done by FBI snitch of where Fred would be sleeping. And they had floor plans, they had drawn it out. And so when the FBI and the leadership of the Chicago Police Department with guidance and leadership from the FBI that came in, they didn't even have to go into the room. They could shoot through the wall. They knew exactly where it was that he was sleeping. They were so effective that his wife, who was then 8 months pregnant with their child, and she talks about how she couldn't wake him up because she didn't know they had drugged this Kool-Aid. They had drugged this Kool-Aid the night before, and they shot their way in, and she said that I could feel the mattresses vibrating from the bullets as they came into it. That was in Chicago, December 4th, 1969. When I walked down the stairs on 44 Bud, right here in St. Louis on Redbud. And when I walked out, after these commands to come out with your hands up and your hands empty, and I was hit in the chest by these dots, these red dots. You've seen them on TV, right? That they use targeting devices mounted on assault weapons. I mean, they was just boom, 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 all over my chest. They let me know that we'll kill you. It was an act of terror that they attempted to initiate, and it was also to have a target lined up in the event that I stumbled or something else. I knew they killed Fred Hampton, and I really thought they were going to kill me at that point, you see? And so the thing is that they can't attack us like they did the Panthers. That we're not isolated. We built a whole movement. We've gone into their spaces too. That's why Jesse Todd is so important being here. Jesse Todd, because the St. Louis Police Department did work with them, as Comrade Mwezi said, worked with the FBI when they came on July 29th. And the St. Petersburg, Florida Police Department worked with them when they came to Achilles' house, and they tacked out places in St. Petersburg, Florida. When they went to the neighborhood, the empty house that we have in St. Petersburg, Florida, you saw the pictures of scores of FBI agents coming out of this house. And where they stole materials and from my home after ransacking it and what have you. It's really important to have a situation where they can't simply come for us. They have to. We've built a whole movement, and Jesse Todd has been an important factor here. He put forth to the board of alderpersons. He tried to get to them a resolution resolving that the city of St. Louis would not allow the police department to cooperate with the FBI or any other federal agents that's attacking individuals, Black individuals, or people who are working for the uplifting of the African community. Todd did that. And he had to fight against the whole sewer of neo-colonial opportunists and other kinds of opportunists, but he did it. A very courageous act. And so I wanted to say that's one way we take the struggle on. You know, we take the struggle on. So we're not just talking about some narrow extremist organization. This is your board of alderpersons. This is your committee on the board. This is your process that we walked into. And when they took our grant from the radio station in Florida, and the county commissioner had gone against the wishes of the people who made the grant and then took it back from us, we went there with people, and the people said, we want this grant. And the people came and testified of the significance of this radio station for our community and what have you. This was on their turf. And we went to their building. We didn't go there armed. We went with the truth, and they can't handle the truth. What's that line in that movie with Tom Cruise and the other guy? I just want the truth. You can't handle the truth, right? That's what it is that we were looking at. So we want the truth. We want to bombard them with truth. We want to bombard them with this history that you know about our movement and you know about our party and our chairman. We want to bombard them with our programs and say, this is what's under attack. So they cannot get away with talking about we just attacking this crazy extremist organization of Black nationalists and what have you. It becomes impossible for them to get away with that. And that's why they are in this really difficult kind of position if you think about it. They had to go the route they went because they couldn't come up with a crime. They wanted to commit a crime and say that it's all right for us to commit the crime because we are committing this crime because they're working for the Russians. So they say, when I say they committed a crime, they say we're supposed to have a right for free speech. And they attack us for free speech. They say that we're supposed to have a right to participate in elections, and they attack us for doing that. We're supposed to have a right to freedom of thought, freedom of assembly, and they attack us. That's the basis of every attack they made on us. Those are the attack on democracy. But they say, nope, it's not an attack on democracy. It's an attack on Russia. And, you know, you thought Christopher Columbus had bad GPS, right? You know, and somehow they're on Redwood in North St. Louis. And they think they're in Russia. And they confuse St. Petersburg, Florida with St. Petersburg, Russia. Or not. Because it's different to attack a house on Redwood where we don't have guns and materials and stuff like that to deal with them than it is to attack Russia. It's different to attack the Uhuru house and the radio station manned by a blind man, right, in St. Petersburg, Florida, than it is to attack St. Petersburg, Russia, right? You attack St. Petersburg, Russia, you're not just gonna have somebody saying, I don't see anything, but I feel everything. You know what I'm saying? You attack St. Petersburg, Russia, you're gonna feel everything. You understand? And so that's the reality that we're dealing with. So we want to have a whole movement, and our success relies on you getting the word out, building where you are, take these campaigns out, telling the world who the party is, telling the world who Omali Yeshitela is, tell the world to show you any organization that exists in the world today that does and has done what the African People's Socialist Party does, not only here, but in various other places around the world. This is what you do. And if you do that and say that, how in the hell can you come up saying that the Russians told us in 2014 to fight for freedom when you've been killing Black people since the founding of the stolen territory, this state that you got now? So how are you going to do that? You had Jesse, you had Joe Biden. Sleepy Joe. Let's go, Brandon. You had Joe Biden. I think it might have been December 7th, where he had 49 so-called heads of state from Africa in the Africa US Summit. And he makes this statement about how America, has some errors and problems in the past. That we committed our original sin, talking to the Black people there, right? This is really interesting. Our original sin is what we did to Black people. Why the hell would they tell somebody from Africa that? Is it that they recognize that we one people too? Did Biden say that our original sin, why has he got to convince African people straight from Africa, supposed to be heads of state, that we all right because we recognize we did something bad to Black people here? He didn't say that when he didn't talk that to Xi from China. He didn't tell the Russians that. He told those Black people that because he recognized, like I recognize, that we're one Africa, one nation of people. And he recognized that there's sympathy inherent throughout the continent of Africa and throughout the world to Black people in the conditions that we experience right here. So he said that we did some pretty bad things. And he talks about the original sin that killed and did all these enslaved African people in this country. Biden did that. And the fact is that that's a statement that probably has its immediate origin in Karl Marx, who talked about the founding of the capitalist system. And he said that it was this thing that we call colonialism and that he called the primitive accumulation of capital. Because when he talked about it, he was talking about the development of the white world. When I'm talking about it, I'm talking about what the white world did to us in the process of becoming developed, right? So Marx said that the capitalist system, what didn't come from God, didn't come from Yahweh, didn't come from anything like that. He says that it has its origin in turning Africa into a warren for the commercial of black skins. Well, commercial hunting of black skins, that's what it, yeah. See, this guy here, the Russians. But he did say that. He said that capitalism itself, the whole capitalist system, not just Biden's location, has its origin in this primitive accumulation that has the same significance in political economy as original sin in theology. That's what Karl Marx said. And of course, Karl Marx was German, so we can't accuse Biden of following the leadership of the Russians in this instance. But the Russians follow the leadership of Karl Marx, and they believe that too. And I always talk about this original sin that created this system. And Biden was able to say that, but he's going to put me in jail. He's going to recognize that on the one hand. On the other hand, he's going to say, put me in jail because I recognize it. That's what he was saying. So we fight them on the democratic question, and you must help in that process. And you must make sure that the world knows that is to say the colonial powers and the colonial ruling class that is being encircled as opposed to the aspirations of the people to be free from colonial domination. That is what has to happen. And with this movement and your participation, we're on a winning trajectory. So, Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairman. You always have an excellent way of dissecting these issues and making it just so clear, like all of these subjects. So, and also have a way of being incredibly mobilizing. I'm ready to go, right? ready to. Yeah, I walked into that. Okay.
I'm gonna burn my nose while that's such a shuffle.
Yeah, you can Google it. That's fine. You can ask me later, or the chairman knows the story, obviously. So next up, we have another unindicted co-conspirator, and also our director of, or the APSP's director of agitation and propaganda, Akila and I.
All right.
We're using, I have used like these religious allusions and to extend it upon this rock, I build my church.
Amen. Hands off Uhuru. Uhuru. Well, I just really want to, first of all, salute this incredible panel and this incredible convention, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement Convention. I can't even believe this was day one. I mean, in the first hour, it was electrifying. So I really want to salute this. And I want to say that despite the July 29th attacks and what their objective was then, which was to silence us, which was to scare us, intimidate us, that the Uhuru Solidarity Movement went on and planned for an Uhuru Solidarity Convention because they cannot crush this movement. And the fact is that regardless of what it is that they do, we still see a future. And we have the vehicle to secure that future. We have everything we need to create that future because we have the profound leadership
of Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party and the African working class and the theory of African internationalism, which we've heard all day today. And I want to just say, before continuing, that I want to just join with Chairman Omali Yeshitela in saying, you know, how insulting it is, this idea that African people, and even all of you who are in this room right now, came to the conclusions that you've come to because of Russia, which takes the credit away from the tireless work that Chairman Omali Yeshitela has done for 60 years to change the world, to shape the future that we're talking about today. And I was born in St. Petersburg, Florida, not St. Petersburg, Russia. And I was taught everything I know, everything I can say up here today because Chairman Omali Yeshitela. I was born in the city of African resistance, the stomping grounds of the chairman, where he tore down this mural in 1966, and he's never looked back. He's always defended. Chairwoman Penny has said that he went up during a time when he saw the defeat of the Black Revolution of the 1960s. Do you know what kind of courage you have to have and what kind of determination you have to see the assassinations, to see the imprisonment, to know what it is that they'll do to you, they will do to your family, they will do to your people, and to still go up against that social system? That's the courage we're called on to have today. And I just want to say again that Russia couldn't have taught any of us that. That's the African working class, because it's the African working class that's been on the hot stove, burned up by this social system. We were the only ones capable of even explaining the world this way, because it was on our backs that this world came into existence. What we call the modern world today, as the chairman has laid out, the colonial mode of production, it was on the backs of African people. How could people in Russia come to those conclusions? African people came to those conclusions and provided that for the rest of the world. So I just wanted to say that. And I want to salute, you know, the Deputy Chair, Onezene Yeshitela, who gave a powerful presentation today. And, you know, I think, you know, when we're in the courtrooms, they have this thing where you have like evidence and you put it up on the screen. And I feel like we have to make that a part of what we show in trial, because this is what they are working to destroy. And we said this is something that the St. Louis government did not create. They didn't do this. They didn't provide this Aquaba Hall that we stand in today. They're not doing the type of work to solve the problem of Black babies dying enough to fill 15 kindergarten classrooms. They're not solving that problem. We're solving that problem. And so we have to, you know, I just really wanted to salute that presentation because it clarifies so much. I mean, so much this theory that we talked about, that's the theory in practice of creating the world, not just being up here having brilliant ideas and being talking heads, but saying this is the future. We've been creating that future and they're trying to destroy that future. They want to take it away because African people have to be dependent. We have to, you know, continue to be the host, as the chairman said, for this blood-sucking parasite. And we refuse. We're severing that relationship. We're severing that relationship. So I just want to appreciate that and also salute, you know, just the African People's Socialist Party and the strategic front of the African Revolution, which is the African People's Solidarity Committee and the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. Uhuru. And I come here all the way from Florida today with the distinguished honor of being characterized as an unindicted co-conspirator by the US government at the age of 26 years old, as a member of the African People's Socialist Party, as a leader in the African People's Socialist Party. I have been identified as standing on the right side of the question. And that is something I find absolutely necessary to do. As the chairman has pointed out, the world is undergoing profound changes. And the economic and political configurations defined by the colonial mode of production are being challenged and replaced. The power and death grip of colonialism is weakening, and it's not due to some natural causes. It's the uprisings in Mali, in Palestine, and in places like Ferguson, Missouri. Right here in the chairman, we talked about this year 2014 for many different reasons. And they said that part of what they said is that this investigation into the party started in 2014. And what we know is also the coup in Ukraine was happening in 2014. But what else was happening in 2014? The murder of Mike Brown and the rebellions that occurred here. It was what the chairman said. He saw the reemergence of the Black Power movement. He saw it in what happened in Ferguson, and the chairman made it his mission to come here and to provide the analysis, to not take us down this trajectory, this road that they want to contain us in of dealing with the ideas in white people's heads, but to deal with the real contradiction, which is what killed Mike Brown and is what left him on the asphalt in August heat, and that was colonialism. So it is this uprising that's responsible for, what it is that we see in terms of this real crisis of the social system. And it is the fight that the oppressed all over the world are engaged in to throw off the yoke of colonialism. It must be understood that despite the attacks of the US government, despite some reactionaries who intend to trap us in the past, despite their efforts to resuscitate a dying social system, that African people determined long ago that we will be free. African people for 600 years of colonial domination, of rape, theft, genocide, have never accepted this imposed relationship lying down, ever. We should never be confused about that. African people, we would rather jump out of the ships that they were using to transport us to what they call America and throughout the world than to be a slave. That was a stance that African people took then. We were always fighting the enslavers, always fighting the colonizers. So we have fought courageously throughout history, and we've taught the world how to make a successful revolution. And through the leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela, we've taught people how to see the world objectively rather than how one wishes to perceive it. This is extremely important to say as we go up against the US government and these allegations of being instructed by some other foreign entity. Jean-Jacques Dessalines did not need Russia to complete the African Revolution of IET. He was informed by slavery and colonialism. The Mau Mau in Kenya, when going up against the British Empire, were not working on behalf of Russian interests. It was the objective interest of the colonized Africans to be free that informed that struggle. The same is true for the history of African resistance. Our just struggle has always been to recapture our place as a free and self-determining people, because the conditions of brutality, humiliation, torture, and genocide are not normal. They are not normal. Every statistic that we hear about, it's not normal. This is not a normal relationship. Even the planet Earth itself is making a statement that this is not a normal relationship. And this relationship that was imposed, colonialism as a mode of production, it was the greatest disruptor to human progress. The greatest disruptor to human progress. I mean, we think about where Africa was. It's the history that they tried to hide. I mean, Chairman talks about how we were building pyramids before white people in what's called Europe learned how to master fire. Without the colonial mode of production and with the regular, uninterrupted progress of Africa, where would the world be today? That's what we say reparations are owed for, by the way. So it is the responsibility of African people to fight and lead our own struggle for independence. And that is our right. Not just our responsibility, but our right. Because how else can you learn about this history? Understanding the ways in which we have inherited the legacy of the slave and be satisfied with that reality. Be satisfied with this reality for our children. We can't be satisfied with that, and the African Revolution is a consequence of our dissatisfaction. I'm saying all of this in part to show how the work of the party and the Uhuru movement is not unusual. It's not, I mean, think about it. African people, we're dealing with these conditions every day of our lives. It only makes sense, logical sense, that we would fight against those conditions. We have a responsibility as human beings to produce and reproduce life. And our inherent responsibility is to survive. So in order to survive, because we can't live and survive under colonialism, not in a real meaningful way, so we have to fight colonialism in order to survive. So like I said, we're not unusual. The peculiar forces are those who are content and refuse to side with the struggle for African liberation, or those actively working against African liberation. Those are the weirdos. And I'll say, now what you talk about? So, and I'll say that the latter is a little less peculiar in the sense that the colonizer has achieved its place on the backs of African and colonized people. And so they have an objective to maintain that parasitic relationship, despite how devastating it may be. But those of us who can see that there is no future under the colonial mode of production, that it has, and it is in the process of destroying the entire planet, and it's willing to take all of those willing to go down with it, that we have a responsibility to change that fate. And at this present moment, that means we must do all that we can to push back the colonial state repression. We must understand that this is a vicious, desperate, dying but not yet dead social system that has always worked to put a stop to the liberation of African people. So their objective is to destroy us and destroy this movement, and that must be clear. Because the party is the vanguard, leading the struggle for African liberation under the leadership of the African working class, and the US government pretty much made the statement for us on July 29th, 2022. Our task is to make their objective to destroy this revolution impossible. The future can no longer be at the mercy of the colonizer. We must rescue the future by building this counteroffensive right now. We must refuse the attempt by the FBI to carry out a legal lynching of Chairman Omali Yeshitela. The chairman has made it clear, freedom for Africans has always been illegal, which is why Nat Turner could be put on trial, which is why you have police dogs, billy clubs, and water hoses used against us standing in lines to vote. This is why Marcus Garvey's movement could be crushed, and why King, Malcolm, Fred, and Patrice could be assassinated, and why today there are still comrades locked up in prison for fighting for African people. This is what we must draw out as we put the colonial state on trial for the crimes committed against African people, those stated above, and for the whole 600 years of the colonial mode of production. And I want to say finally, comrades, that we are an incredible time in history. And regardless of their intent, this attack on us has opened up an ability to expose without deniability the fundamental contradiction of colonialism. This is why the issue we see, this is the issue we see masses of people grappling with now. Just like when reparations was this unpopular opinion and you were lunatic fringe when you were dealing with it. Now in their own discussions, they have to deal with this question of reparations. And that didn't come because we said, okay, they don't want to talk about reparations, so we won't talk about reparations. No, we went up against all the odds and we fought for reparations. And so now they're dealing with this question. Same is true for colonialism. We said, no, we're not dealing with the anti-racist politic and where you want to keep it. We're going to have to go in on this issue, and it don't matter if you like it, whether or not you can handle the truth. We're going to put colonialism as the fundamental contradiction. That's the thing that the people are dealing with throughout the world. And so, again, this is what the people are grappling with really for the first time in history. Since colonialism, the first time in history, masses of people are dealing with the fundamental contradiction. And that is due to the relentless work of our party and Chairman Omali Yeshitela, undoubtedly. And as the chairman has stated, the genie is out of the bottle, and there are no 3 wishes that can put it back in. People are able to see the world as it is, and therefore they're able to come to the same types of conclusions, which means the world has forever changed. Victory is on the horizon, comrades. We are winning. Hands off Uhuru, and hands off Chairman Omali Yeshitela, or the sky is the limit. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Akile. We are winning and we will win. Okay. Worked up. Okay, next up, our next incredibly mobilizing speaker, another one of the unindicted co-conspirators, the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, Chairwoman Penny Hess.
Uhuru, hands off Uhuru, hands off Africa, unity through reparations. Uhuru. Wow, I really want to salute that powerful, powerful presentation, Director Keeley. That was incredibly mobilizing, and I want to salute Chairman O'Malley Shatella. I want to say that on July 29th, my house, the house I share with Kitty Riley, was also attacked by the FBI at 5 a.m. And they came with the guns and they went through the whole house and held us captive in the living room in our particular case, broke down the door frame, and just, they were there for hours and hours. They took computers, they did all of this, and we could recognize, and we knew they were attacking. Ultimately, we found out, but we suspected anyway that they were attacking the party. We didn't know exactly who or how many different places, but I found out on that day that I was an unindicted co-conspirator, something I'd never heard of before. But I knew that I was proud to be an unindicted co-conspirator. And that I knew from the very first day of the formation of the African People's Solidarity Committee, even when I couldn't answer any question. I didn't know how to, when I came to the first event, actually in Louisville, where I saw the chairman, and the how I ended up there, I don't even know. Somebody brought me there, and they introduced me to you, Chairman. And the chairman asked me, well, what do you think of the Communist Party of France? Because I have just been living in France for 2 years. And I said, oh, they're great. And the chairman yells to Kay Fing, who's across the room, she thinks the Communist of France is great. And I was like, oh my God. But when I heard, and the chairman said, well, we're forming the African People's Solidarity Committee in a couple of months in Florida. So, so I was there, and before I could even, say anything, I didn't know anything to say at all. If I did, everything I'll have to write down and ask that, that question. But I knew that I wanted to be on this side. I wanted to be on the side of African people. I knew that. And any question I couldn't answer was always like, I don't know, but no white person is going to answer this. That this is, not even a Russian, just a regular white person. I mean, that I wanted to be on this side because this is the future. And the chairman could always, back in 1976, lay out what the world could look like when African people are free. Just everything that, like, as was said, as Director Keeley said, that we take for granted as normal. What are you talking about? The genius of the African working class that we see in this movement will be unleashed on the world. And that this is what will save the world. No white person is going to save the planet. We did this. This is colonialism that did this. This is parasitism. It will be Africans. It will be indigenous. It will be the people on the planet Earth who solve the problems, because we have to get rid of every vestige of the system that exists. Everything has to go. You hear white people saying, well, all we have to do is live off the grid. No, the grid, you mean indigenous stolen land? Right. That's what we have to do? We have to live on their land where they were living off the grid? And we put the grid there and killed them? I mean, I just, the future is in the African working class, and we could see that, and I could always see that in what the chairman was talking about. And I want to say that, yes, I am incredibly proud to be an unindicted co-conspirator. I'm proud to be on this side, identified by the enemy, by the colonial mode of production and the colonial state as an enemy of the state, but on the side of the liberation of African people. And that it has been an incredible 46 years of learning, of seeing what the world can be. And the other day, actually, from our radio show, Reparations in Action, we interviewed Director Akile and DJ Eddie, who is the manager of Black Power 96 radio station. And it was, it was so beautiful. It was a vision of the new world, because here, they were both talking about the station, and Eddie was talking about the station, and he is, he's completely blind. He's been blind his whole life. So he's never could work in a regular job, but he is the most incredible manager. He's able to be the manager of the liberated radio station. And he was a DJ, and now he's a manager. And what this grant, taking away this grant, that was for equipment that would enable him to more easily be able to be the manager without being able to see. That's what this system did. This is what this movement does. And people testified about it before the Pinellas County Commission that, well, this is the station that plays the people's music. You don't have to have a record contract. They play the people's music, and that and they have a policy. You don't say derogatory things about African women or anyone. You don't say that. And the people, the various artists, they love that about it. This is what this station is. You don't have to be something that you're not. You have to be your community. And that's the future. That's the future. I just want to say that. And that the fact that for the first time in history, white people can be something. We can be human beings. We can rectify our past. We can take this on. We can go. We have a mission. We have been assigned that. And we can be part of building something, not of our own creation, but something that is part of a whole world in which African people are free, and in which human beings, just the soul, the genius. We heard the poetry, we hear this, we hear the culture of African people. And, it's just another commodity here. It's another commodity, and we steal it and we take it and say it's ours and scratch the name off, as the chairman says. But there's going to be a future when just a flowering of the planet, a flowering of humanity under African people. This is the word. This is the world that we want to live in. This is the answer to the questions, to all of the despair, all of the contradictions that we have. So we've been assigned to be a second front, to be Black power and white face, that they have to go attack the party by coming to the white community for the first time. This is historic, because no one has ever defined or solved the question of what to do about the white people. And I also want to say that Deputy Chair laid out, and we saw the incredible Black Power Blueprint. We're going to go on a tour tomorrow. We're going to see it. And I would say every single person who has gone on this tour has been deeply moved by it, to see what it means for African workers to have power and to be winning and to build something so beautiful and so powerful that, as was said, the city not only doesn't do it, it takes resources away and destroys what's going to happen. And Deputy Chair talked about, not only the state attack, the FBI attack, but also this financial attack, which is what they use against peoples all around the world, the sanctions to keep resources away from them. And to do that, to starve people, they use it against Iran and Venezuela and even Russia. They're trying to do that. Russia was able to, to build these other relationships. So it's not feeling it in the same way, but at Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Afghanistan, other places where it puts sanctions on to starve people and to bring down state power of a formerly colonized country and people, to create and foment a coup of some sort. It goes together. They want to overturn it. They want regime change. And that's what they're trying to do here, because they're trying to say that they intimidate the people. They don't want the supporters, to happen. They don't want the resources to come in. And we have now two things that we have to do. We have to raise the money for our lawyers, which is, phenomenally expensive, but never lose or diminish the amount of resources that have to come in for reparations for the Black Power blueprint. We have to do both things. And certainly there are other resources in white society to easily do that, but we have to win it and we have to take it on. And this is what it means, this hands off Uhuru. I really want to salute Chair Mwezi, who's just such a dynamic leader of the hands off Uhuru, it's just such an important front of the party, of this movement that the chairman has fought for, that has its own base in so many ways. It's like a huge, all different kinds of people who have stood up with the chairman, who stood up with the African People's Socialist Party. So the urgency of us building in the white community as this second front, as has been said, like building the 141 Uhuru solidarity centers in many different cities, and winning more people and bringing more resources and more workers and more different ways that we can be organizing and holding teach-ins and telling the truth about America as it really is and the world and our responsibility. This is our future. This is our ability to be something, not just another colonizer obsessed with our stomachs and pocketbooks, as the chairman has said about us. And, that just with our own, feeding our own ego and all the things that this system is about, that we have a chance, we have an opportunity to join a future that is winning, that will win. Africa will be free. African people will be free. Indigenous people will have their land back and be free. And I just want to end by saying unity through reparations. Uhuru.
Thank you so much for that, Chairwoman Penny. And now we're going to go ahead and move right on. We're actually going to have a video. And this was kind of brought up earlier today, actually earlier in this panel. It'll be a video on the Dred Scott Sanctuary City Resolution.
Right on. Good evening.
On July 29, 2022, the FBI violently raided 7 homes and offices of the Uhuru movement, including the North St. Louis home of Chairman Omali Yeshitela. The Uhuru movement is responsible for creating numerous community programs through the Black Power Blueprint in North St. Louis. The City of St. Louis Police Department cooperated with the July 29th FBI raids on the chairman's house and 3 other properties. In January of 2023, 18th Ward Alderman Jesse Todd submitted to the Public Safety Committee the Dred Scott Sanctuary City Resolution, calling on the city to refuse to cooperate with the FBI and federal agencies in attacks on Black community organizers working to uplift the community.
The purpose of the Dred Scott resolution is to make the city of St. Louis a sanctuary city in which the St. Louis Police Department and city government will refuse to cooperate with the FBI and any other federal agency to attack Black community organizers and members for charges stemming from work for the betterment and uplifting of their community. So that's the purpose.
Some aldermen expressed their support for the programs of the Black Power Blueprint and called for a second hearing with the representative of the FBI and police department to hold them accountable.
For those members of this committee who are not close to that north side area, all the work that is being done there is extremely well done. I probably stop by, most especially during the summer months when there's a lot of activity almost every Saturday that there is something going on.
The chair of the committee called on the clerk to contact the FBI and police.
So what I would say is if he could reach out to them, and we are open to I'm open to having a public safety meeting based off of when they can make it.
Okay, I will, so noted, and I'll give that to Clerk Kennedy
But
to schedule it when they're available.
A second hearing was held on February 8th, where 22 individuals and organizations testified in support of the resolution.
For the majority of my 81 years of life on this planet, I have fought here in the United States for the upliftment of African people from the ubiquitous horrors stemming from the original sin of U.S. domestic colonialism.
You can say the spirit of this body. See, sometimes that helps a lot. The spirit of this body is that you should not cooperate with people who are violating the human rights of people to live in peace and move about peacefully in their neighborhoods.
This city resolution is an opportunity for redemption, to take a step in making right the acts of oppression that have been committed against the Black community here in the city of St. Louis.
That same day, the chair of the Public Safety Committee lied and claimed it was Alderman Todd's responsibility to have called the FBI and police, something he wouldn't have had the power to do.
Okay, and then Alderman Todd, I believe at the last meeting, they asked that you would reach out to the police and FBI to have them come. Have you reached out to either one?
I understand about your role as chairman.
Right.
And my understanding from our last meeting was that you were it came up, and I don't want to call people's name because I don't want to get into personalities. It came up from some of the committed people that we needed to invite the police and the FBI. My understanding was you said you would get in touch with them.
No, I did not say that.
Well, I'm not going to, we had.
It's a tape. Everybody can shake their head however they want it. It's a tape.
Although initially the committee had a quorum to vote, the majority of the aldermen dropped out before a vote was held, and even those who stayed were too cowardly to vote for it.
Okay, I believe that is all the speakers. Before I go through the committee, I want to do a quorum call because it seems like we keep dropping off and picking up. I don't even know if we still have a quorum.
Why were the aldermen complicit with the vicious FBI and police attacks on one of the few organizations creating community programs, something the city has never done? This is not over. New York City District 42 Councilman Charles Barron will sponsor this resolution in the New York City Council. Donate to fund the legal defense for Chairman Omali Yeshitela and others facing indictment and arrest by the FBI on bogus charges, a continuation of COINTELPRO. handsoffuhuru.org/donate.
Let me first of all say Uhuru. I give thanks to Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who is actually they want to give a legal lynching so that they can set an example. They've been doing that for ever since we've been here. So, and I want to also give a shout out to Achille, who is the other African co-conspirator. They've been lynching African men and women since we've been here. I also want to give a shout out to Penny Hess, the Solidarity and Chairman of the Solidarity Committee, and Jesse Neville, because we have a new approach to this, and they're standing and they've indicted some white people. I think this, and this is some Black history too. And the strangest, it's a white history too, by the way. So we're having some American history here. That's what Black history is supposed to be. And you would be surprised. This occurred, the revolution started during Dr. Martin Luther King's celebration. Yeah. And they closed down whole city hall, raised the African flag. And these same Africans who were on that committee, you couldn't hear a peep out of them. So a flag is important, but it's not just a flag. You can raise the flag just to have and be a colonialist. You can be a puppet and be raising the flag. So all the folks that raise the African flag are not working in the interest of African people. Then but that happened during Dr. King's holiday. Then it was Black History Month. We were celebrating Black History Month. These Africans set up there celebrating, giving resolutions and all, but when it came time to really call out the FBI, the police, they were nowhere to be found. And the committee, previous committee, and this committee too has actually the Public Safety Committee under the previous president, Louis Reed, who, by the way, is in prison. He should be there. He's a Black person, but he should. If I were in charge of jails, I would lock him up too. But because I sat on the committee, the way he did this community, for the way the crime that he has committed against this community, him and the other Black alder people. I'm talking about Black people. Yeah. Every committee at the board has an equal number, and the president gives the African people a majority. Yeah. And we had all Black people on what's called ENA, which controls, with the board of alder people, control all the money. So you have a majority of Black people, mayor, president of the board of aldermen, and a comptroller who counts the money. And this is what North St. Louis looked like. Yeah. And that's why we couldn't even get a resolution passed. And they got there because of the civil rights movement, by the way. They exploited the civil rights and the Black liberation movement, got those same Black people on the board. Everything, they got everything, I got everything, all of us got, none of us got anything on our own. Yeah. We got it because of the liberation movement. And I'm gonna stand here and let you know I'm willing to lose it because of the liberation movement, because I wouldn't have it. It doesn't belong to me, it belongs to the people. And so the point is that okay, so the resolution, I will read the resolution to you, and then I will come back and point out some main points. The Dred Scott City of Refuge Resolution for the City of St. Louis, Missouri. Whereas Dred and Harriet Scott sought and were denied refuge from enslavement in the city of St. Louis in 1846, and were told they had no rights any white man had to respect. Whereas the city of St. Louis and its police department worked together with the FBI to conduct unjust, violent, military-style raids on homes and offices of the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement on July 29, 2022. Whereas the raids militarily occupied the most impoverished neighborhood of St. Louis, threatening Uhuru movement programs, fighting gentrification, and building economic and political power in the Black working class communities. Whereas the African People's Socialist Party was targeted because it has relentlessly fought for the liberation of Africa and African people for the past 50 years. Whereas the FBI raids on the Uhuru movement pose a threat to the African community, to hard-won democratic rights to participate in elections in their own interests. Whereas the African peoples have a right to petition the United Nations to investigate the Genocide Convention as it applies to the conditions of African peoples in the United States and the original sin of slavery and colonialism in this country. Whereas African peoples have a right to freedom of speech, association, assembly, including public statements of dissent regarding the official position of the United States on the Russian-Ukraine war. Whereas the city of St. Louis has consciously attacked and destroyed African communities over the years in order to promote business and prosperity for others. Whereas the city of St. Louis destroyed the thriving neighborhood of Mill Creek Valley, carried out Let It Rot programs that kept resources from going to Black neighborhoods, and worked with federal agents to dump toxic chemicals from the rooftops of the public housing projects. Whereas the brutal condition faced by African people in the United States continue today, where 1 in 3 African born in the years 2000 will be imprisoned in his lifetime. Whereas the United States, which has amongst the highest rates of maternal mortality in industrialized countries, African women die during childbirth at a rate 3 times higher than that of as white women, and in some states 7 times as high. Whereas the average white family had 3 times the wealth of average African family. Whereas over the years, St. Louis has been known for resistance and struggle for the interests and uplifting of the Black community. Whereas millions of African people in the 1960s struggling for the basic human rights and economic and political power over their lives faced the effect of the COINTELPRO program of the FBI, which carried out assassinations, political imprisonment, slander, and harm. Whereas Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, Martin Luther King, Marcus Garvey, along with W.B. Du Bois, James Baldwin, Aretha Franklin, Sam Cooke, and others such as civil rights worker Viola Luzo and American Indian leader Leonard Peltier were targeted, threatened, surveilled, imprisoned, and are assassinated by the FBI with the complicity of the local police departments. Whereas the police murder of 18-year-old Michael Brown in the suburbs of Ferguson in 2014 sparked widespread resistance to long-standing police violence and was seen around the world. Whereas the FBI files on the murder of Ferguson activist Dan Seals and others revealed that local police work with the FBI to target, and in many cases, many people say to murder Seals. Where we recognize that a progressive and prosperous St. Louis active African community of St. Louis is beneficial and contributes to the well-being of all residents of the city. Therefore, be it resolved that the city of St. Louis will be a sanctuary city in which the St. Louis Police Department and city government will refuse to cooperate with the FBI and the federal agency to attack Black community organizers and members for charges stemming from the work for the betterment and uplift of their community. Therefore, therefore, this resolution repudiates the denial of refuge for Dred and Harriet Scott and the ongoing notion that Black people have no rights which the white man is bound to respect. This resolution redeems the city's relationship to the African community, vindicate the blood-drenched struggles of African people for the democratic right to vote, to create self-determination programs, to dissent against injustice, to exercise our right to freedom of speech and political assembly, and to take our views to the United Nations. This is what this resolution said. And some of the things that I would just like to give examples of throughout our history, we have been denied our rights. And so I will go through it quickly because I have a few minutes. And the police have sworn, the police themselves, if law enforcement has sworn to uphold the law, but they are the ones who are the lawbreakers. They were just showboating on our tax dollars. We pay them, but they were showboating. We are held accountable to the law, but the law does not, and pay for the law enforcement officers, all of them, but they do not respect our rights. And we pay taxes too. We have been fighting for more than, since we've been here, for our birthrights. And no one else and no other group has to do that. These rights are supposed to be protected rights, but when they shoot drones at the chairman, the right, and these rights too are guaranteed. And in the 13th Amendment, quickly, it says that a person shouldn't be held. They even held Kitty and Penny, and then they also Jesse and Amanda. They held them, just held them for hours. And you're not supposed to, so they violated Black folk rights, white people who help us, they violate their rights too when they started helping us. You have no rights they have to respect. They don't, once you don't go along with their program, they start taking your rights away. As long as you carry the guns and stuff and oppress Black people, you're all right with them. But once you start telling the truth, and once you start telling the truth, and as the Bible says, that the truth make you free, but once you start telling the truth, like O'Malley said, the truth makes you free, so did Achilles, so that once you start telling the truth, once you know the truth and start telling the truth, it doesn't matter who you are free, but they're gonna try to lock you up, but we're gonna stand 100% with every unindicted and conspirator in this room and everybody else. Uhuru, comrades.
Uhuru. And that was the resolution. Jesse Todd made it easy for him to do the right thing and still couldn't do it. So that's right. That's right. Jesse is. So whenever we plan an event at USM, we always look for endorsers, and I feel like our most reliable, one of our top go-tos every time is the Green Party. And every time, since I've been with the movement, every time they respond and they send an incredible representative. And this time they sent Susan Armstrong, representative of the Green Party.
Thanks very much.
Yes.
Because this is a community, share our comments. Bringing you the support from your green friends. the Green Party of St. Louis. I'm Susan Armstrong, and I want to recognize Angelica Mueller-Rowley. And I want to recognize your friend, your green friend, Robert, with I want to speak personally first, because first off, there's nothing worse for the planet than war and racism and colonialism, full stop. I'm a civil engineer. My specialty, my licensing, my life's work has been health, safety, and environmental engineering. And racism and colonialism are the worst things you can do for the earth. Because again, racism extracts, exploits, and ruins lives, communities, countries. Also too, I wanted to say two things recently. Was reading the story about Dred Scott and Harriet Scott when they were fighting for their freedom, the right that they had. They were free people. They had to hide their daughters. They had to hide their daughters because Black girls' wombs generated the property and the prosperity of this country.
Yeah.
And so while we may feel gaslighted, while we may feel preyed upon, while we may feel harvested, we are still the wealth of this country. And if we walk with that knowledge, right, that we have gold mines between our legs, like Maya Angelou says, diamonds between our legs, forget the gaslighting. All right, and the second thing that I want to share is what woke me up most was Michael Brown, and my sons are similar ages to them. His mother was at work while he was dying on asphalt. So she's participating in a system.
Yeah.
She goes to work, she makes somebody else's money for them.
Yeah.
While her son was not protected by the people responsible for that. And that, with my sons, that just stopped me. I'm like, this system is not made for us. So let me speak in behalf of the Green Party and Robert and Angelica, if you feel free to mention. And again, we support and agree that you did not commit a crime. This is not a crime. That it's your success and the betterment of the community that's gotten the attention of the FBI. And we want to say that it's the right of activists, journalists, and scholars to travel and speak with people and officials from countries with which the United States has a hostile relationship. And that leads us to voice support for a resolution, the Sanctuary City Resolution, accepting your right to do the same. And this is from a professor of international relationships. Barbara Shapiro says, giving Blacks in St. Louis the opportunity to guide their own future is a sound foundation for a strong community. The Black Power Blueprint is a great example of success. So again, she also states that our country, our state, our city, St. Louis all bear the scars of a long history of racism. Some of these scars are a testament to a brutal attack against people of African descent. Some of the scars are not obvious, but they reflect deep wounds. Angie, if it's okay with you, I'd like to read from your piece. Declaring St. Louis to be a city of refuge for all people who struggle for social justice and solidarity with sanctuary programs, for all those who need a safe haven, will uplift the community and enhance public safety in this city. So we support your movement. And it's a message. Don Fitz is always our educator. And he mentioned that after the first successful slave revolt in 1800s in Haiti, the US vowed to destroy which was once the jewel of the Western Hemisphere and leave it destitute and impoverished, which is done through today. I work with people in Haiti. I feel we owe them a debt with their revolt, which inspired New Orleans, which moved up the Mississippi River Valley, to the slave stampedes that happened here in Missouri. We simply accumulated, we just simply gathered and broke for freedom. So we owe, I believe, St. Louis a debt to Haiti just for starting, igniting that match, causing the prairie fire to inspire us to run for freedom. Don Fitz also writes that the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement seeks to use the insights gained from the Cuban community-based healthcare and their creation of a women's health center, which, like Cuba, would focus on a preventative medicine for women and infants. And I also want to state that no matter what your education as a Black woman, no matter what your education, no matter what your college debts are, you have a greater chance of dying in childbirth than uneducated white woman.
Yeah.
Hard fact, hard fact.
Yeah.
And you still have the debt of the college. Right, right. So again, we support you. And if I might read some of Robert's words. In the last 10 years, I have worked with activists in Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Palestine who struggle against the US sanctions imposed for political reasons. I continue to do so today, in addition to speaking out and raising funds to help these communities survive. If the African People's Socialist Party members are found to be co-conspirators against the United States government, then so am I. Thank you. I'll give my time to the next speaker. Thank you.
Uhuru, Susan, thank you to the Green Party and everyone you mentioned through there. Like always, such an incredible stance in solidarity. So next up, to close out our panel, I'm going to bring up the individual who got me involved in Uhuru at a vegan festival, which I had no business being. Chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, Jesse Neville.
Uhuru. Well, just first of all, I want to give another round of applause for this amazing panel. And I mean, all of these presentations have been profound. And I mean, there's a lot that could be said about that, but I specifically just want to reiterate the appreciation for the Green Party, for all of the members of the Green Party that were named, for the support of the Hands Off Uhuru campaign, and also for the material contributions of resources towards the Black Power Blueprint on numerous occasions. And related to the question of resources is what I want to address briefly as the last section of this panel. I want to talk about Regions Bank and what's coming up from the Hands Off Uhuru campaign and what the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is calling on every single one of our members and supporters to do to participate and stand with the Hands Off Uhuru campaign to basically ruin Regions Bank. That is what they deserve, a run on Regions Bank. Let's destroy, as the chairman said, their brand and their bottom line. They want to make economic warfare against the African People's Socialist Party. Bring it on. And if anyone was watching last Tuesday night, I was attempting to read the statement I'm about to read to you, and I got a little thrown off because there were, people might have seen the live stream, there were sirens going off. And it turned out that while we were doing this event and this meeting, a building right down the block, yet another building, was burning down right down the block, like within line of sight from this building. That happened while we were talking about this exact issue. So I can't remember if I actually got to the end of the statement. So now is my time. We'll see what happens this time. But so this is the leaflet. This is the content of the leaflet that we're calling on people to print out from the Hands Off Uhuru website and take with you to Regions Banks. We're going to be having the Hands Off Uhuru campaign under Chair Mwezi is going to be having a meeting on March 20th to talk about this, and a lot more is going to be put out at that meeting. So look out for more information about that. But even before then, you can start printing out this leaflet, going to Regions Bank and just passing it out to customers that are going to hopefully go in as customers and walk out as people boycotting, Regions Bank. And what this says is stop the attacks by Regions Bank and the FBI against Black self-determination, and Regions Bank's domestic economic sanctions on the Black community. Regions Bank has joined the FBI in an attack on the Uhuru movement. that has worked for self-reliance and self-determination for Black people within the US for more than 50 years. The work of the Uhuru movement is based on the belief that the dignity and well-being of Black people require Black community economic development rather than charity and welfare slavery. Regions recently informed APEDF that they plan to terminate some of the accounts that have been used for donations from thousands of people for self-determination programs such as the Black Power Blueprint in the most impoverished neighborhood of North St. Louis. Over the years, the Uhuru movement has initiated more than 50 economic development and self-determination projects, furniture stores in Philadelphia and Oakland, outdoor markets in St. Louis and Philadelphia that provide income for vendors and their families, and an ability for money to circulate within economically depressed Black communities. Why would Regions Bank allow itself to become a political tool of the FBI and the Justice Department that claims that the Uhuru movement is under the malign influence of Russia because it ran candidates for local office in St. Petersburg, Florida, calling for reparations and Black community control of the police? Why would Regions Bank allow itself to participate in FBI efforts to destroy the Uhuru movement's work to build a Black women's health center in St. Louis, or provide jobs and training for African men and women upon release from prison, all of which contribute to enhancing the dignity and capacity of a Black community long denied the material resources for any independent development? The Uhuru movement also includes hundreds and thousands of white people who believe in Black self-determination and self-reliance in Uhuru institutions, and individual white members in more than 141 cities throughout the US. Why then does Regions Bank not work with the Uhuru movement, rather than joining in this scurrilous FBI attack that claims that Black people are too backward to be able to recognize their own interest without white Russia's direction? Black people are also patrons of Regions, as are thousands of the white people. We already heard some of them today said, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take my money out of Regions Bank and give it to the Uhuru movement. Thousands of white people who unite with the efforts of Black people. So that's the point. I mean, they need to realize what a huge mistake they made with uniting with the FBI in this attack on the Uhuru movement. So stop these attacks by Regions Bank on the Uhuru movement and the Black community. Stop the attacks by the FBI. Support the right of African people for their own self-determination and African liberation. Demonstrate at Regions Bank branches in your city and hand out this flyer. We have a place you can write letters. You can donate to the Hands Off Uhuru Legal Defense Fund. There are Regions branches in 16 states in this country. So we'll be able to provide people with info. You can look it up and see if there's one in your city. But even if there's not, you can do a banner drop from a freeway, a huge banner that exposes Regions Bank, that exposes this attack on African people. And like the chairman said, we want to tarnish their brand. We want to expose them. We want to show what happened. There needs to be blowback. Anytime they take a strike against the Uhuru movement, it has to whiplash right back into their faces. And that's what we have a responsibility to do. So I want to see a show of hands, people in the room and online. Let us know in the chat if you will be prepared to hold a demonstration and be out at Regions Bank very soon. Uhuru. All right, good. So we will be in touch with everyone. That's everyone in the room. So we have the sign-in sheets from this event, so we'll be contacting everyone, and let us know in the chat. We're going to be making this happen very, very soon, so we will be in touch about that. And the last thing I want to say, that same meeting on March 20th is going to be talking about the Legal Defense Fund and the work to raise these resources. And we have comrades like in St. Petersburg, Jamie Simpson, Johan Bedingfield, and others that are working on building an amazing benefit show that's going to be happening in May. That's the kind of thing we want to call on USM members to do everywhere, to make a pledge to raise $500 or more to the Hands Off Uhuru Legal Defense Fund. There are still over $100,000 that need to be raised just for this first known amount of money that is needed to fund the legal defense, to prepare to go take this to trial and beat them and fight them and win. And it is a lot of money, but when it comes to how much money white people have hoarded in our communities on the backs of African people, it's actually nothing. I mean, statistically speaking, it is a high statistical probability. If you look at the raw numbers in terms of the distribution of stolen resources in the white community, that there is somebody participating in this event right now, either in person or online, that could fund the rest of what's needed, that could put in $100,000 and still have hundreds of thousands of dollars to their name. So if that's you, get in touch with us, and your contribution will be tax deductible because the Hands Off Uhuru campaign has a fiscal sponsor. It's a 501c3, so it is tax deductible. And we want to take this on. We want to go ahead and get this funded, get this legal defense funded and ready to go forward. So, so we're going to be in touch more about that, involving everyone in USM, both in both prongs of this economic aspect of the fight back. You know, taking on Regions Bank and also continuing to raise resources for the Hands Off Uhuru Legal Defense Fund. So I just want to turn it back over to Brendan. Yes, and just reiterate the theme and really salute Director Akile's powerful statement. And just reiterate again what was stated: stop the legal lynching of Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Hands off Chairman Omali Yeshitela, or the sky's the limit. Uhuru.
Okay, I want to thank all the panelists up here. That was incredible. So that we are going to move on to our closing remarks and announcements. If our panelists want to move back to their seats. And then if the chairman or chairwoman Penny, if the chairman has some closing remarks.
Uhuru comrades. It's been a splendid day, and this is an incredible convention, and I'm really glad to be here. I'm glad to be involved in the discussion in the most economically depressed sector of the African population here in St. Louis. This discussion is not supposed to be happening here. We're not supposed to be in the midst of a devastated African working class community talking about the kinds of things that we're talking about. Bringing, like even the science of revolution, helping people to understand what it is that we're dealing with. This is extraordinary. And this is why it's necessary for them to attack the African People's Socialist Party. Because the fact of the matter is that we are a party of the African working class in composition as well as ideologically. And so it's very powerful to have this movement on the ground in the African communities. That's what the significance of having all of the projects and programs that we've talked about that we characterize as Black Power. I think that history is clearly being made here, and that you are part of that history. And we've created a new movement of sorts, in the sense that we've gone beyond this whole notion, as I said earlier, of there being a white world over here and a Black world over here, a pitiful, hapless Black world over here. That's not the deal at all. We've shown the dialectics, we've shown the unity of opposites here, that we're talking about one whole that's connected as a unity of opposites. Poverty coming as a consequence of the wealth by another sector of the population. That's a relationship. And that your participation in this challenges this whole notion, as I mentioned, of two separate worlds, one not having a relationship to the other, except as one being pitiful recipients of the beneficence of the colonizer, and the other being this wealthy and intelligent entity that's out there. It's a major blow against this system. And it's blown the barriers away from human consciousness, so that we don't have to accept the definitions that they've imposed on us. That kind of world doesn't exist. But to characterize it in that fashion is to liquidate, disguise, where all the resources come from that the colonizer possessed. We used to talk sometimes about how this is even something that's put in the form of popular culture in this country. We talk about the whole mythology of the Santa Claus, right? That comes at Christmas, and the Santa Claus that brings all of this wealth to the good, all the goodies to the good, and then and the bad are the ones who get the cold and the stockers and get the bad treatment. And the Santa Claus, the question of where does Santa Claus get these goods from is part of the way in the popular culture that this relationship hides itself, disguises itself. Because Santa Claus got this sled of sleighs full of goodies that he rides around in on reindeers. And all these goodies are created by these forces who, like dwarfs, I've forgotten how they've characterized elves or something to that effect, elves. And they're created in the North Pole, at a place where it's too cold to work and produce, right? And so you have these magic little elves that gives this fat white guy all of these goodies, right? And he flies around the whole world dropping off these goodies to good people. And the bad people don't get any. And this liquidates, this obscures the real relationship, because the goodies didn't come from a place where it's too cold to work. In fact, in many instances, white people said it's too hot. And they weren't created by elves or magic people or anything like that. Human labor created it. And human labor is responsible for the wealth that's coming to this place of the good people at the expense of those of us who are not good. So I want to just say that we're knocking all of that down, exposing the genuine relationship, making it possible for people to enter into honest relationships based on integrity and principle, destroying this most illogical, insane, and debilitating notion that somehow there's this white supremacist inherent superiority, all of this garbage, and destroying it. And it's debilitating for white people to run around thinking this. And most white people don't believe it when they look in the mirror. It's just when they're comparing it to us, themselves, to us and other people, that they feel that. Comrade Penny Hess was talking about the loneliness that is being experienced. The only friend we got is in a computer. And Facebook, Zuckerberg provides you with friends. Somebody you never met, never will meet. Somebody you never will touch or anything like that. It's become a substitute for relationships in the real world, where we're tearing all of that down. And the people, this is a critical question. And this is what we have to go to. And we have to have the courage to go to the people. And we can't be intimidated by these ideas, because the old ideas are being broken down. Smash them to smithereens, destroy all those old ideas that stand between us and the future. You have to have the courage to do that. That's what flashbang grenades at 5 o'clock in the morning is trying to prevent that. That's what this attack on our radio station in St. Petersburg, Florida is trying to prevent. That's why they would like to isolate us and make people too frightened to have a relationship with us. They want to prevent that, but we can take this truth out, and we can bust down these barriers to the brains of the people and allow the people to repossess their own brains and take them out of the hands of the oppressor. So I just wanted to say that this is an extraordinary meeting, and let's build Uhuru Solidarity Movement. Let's build it every damn place, everywhere there's a living, breathing white person, let's build it. And this Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and that's the Achilles heel. If they cannot have the absolute unity, if they cannot have the absolute unity of the colonial population, of the settlers, etc., then they're in big time trouble, because they rely own that. That's what Trump did. Trump unleashed this whole mass of white people to make America white again. And then Biden was selected to be the Democratic candidate for president because he said he can do what Trump did. I can go get them white people too. That's what they've done, see? And what we have to do is give the people an alternative, give the people a chance to make a choice. They don't want the people who would follow Trump, who would follow DeSantis and others to even have a choice in what they believe. They would bomb my house so that people can't hear. That Zuckerberg would close us down so that the people can't hear. And if they can't hear any other explanation for their reality, they end up accepting the explanation they get from the oppressor, from the colonizer. And the explanation they get from the colonizer, as quietly as it's kept, is not to their benefit. Because Biden and Trump and the rest of them will send you to your death as they're sending people to their deaths all around the world today. And what we have to do is liberate the planet Earth, liberate all the people. You talk about being an environmentalist, the anti-colonial movement, that's the environmentalist movement. You want to fight to protect the planet Earth, the environment, the assault on the planet Earth, the environment came with the assault, the colonial assault on the planet Earth and the peoples here. That's where it came from. We are the environmentalists. Why can't we get the black people, right, to fight to protect the environment? Hell, we've been the ones who protected the environment. And when the indigenous people had control of this land, this resource of their life, there was no environmental crisis here. There was no threat to the ozone. And that's the same thing was true of all the other people who were colonized. So you want to get the planet in shape. Then what you do is get your life in shape, get your ideas in shape, and then fight to join with the struggle against colonialism. That's the future of the people. That's where progress is being made in the world. Uhuru.
Well. We made it, folks. We made it. And what a first day of the 2023 USM National Convention it was. Uhuru, Uhuru. Can I just say that Grace Jones started off the second half with some amazing poetry. And what we heard from then on was pure poetry itself. Am I right? Everything we heard after that. Uhuru. So again, I want to thank everybody who took the time to spend the day with us today, standing in genuine solidarity with African liberation. And we won't keep you any longer, but we do want to invite everybody who is here to come out and enjoy some dinner with us at Mezkarem Ethiopian Restaurant at 3210 South Grand, a few blocks south of Tower Grove Park. So we will be having a casual award ceremony, not to mention some of the best food in St. Louis, I'm told. Okay, so with that, here, Justin, do you have a couple of marks? Beautiful.
Real quick. Uhuru, everyone. It's been an incredible day. Just want to salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party, Deputy Chair Owen Zane, Director Akile, Chair Mwezi, everybody, Chairwoman Penny, the incredible poets, Faux Feet, Grace, everybody. This was powerful. And also want to shout out our MC, Sarah. Great job, Sarah. Brendan, Glenn, everyone who took part in this today, Leah and Amanda. And I just wanted to announce that we at this moment, if my math is correct, we have raised $18,660. Okay. Amanda is nodding her head, so I think my math was right. Which means that, oh boy. We have to raise 1,340 to meet our goal of $20,000. So yes, let's give that a round of applause. You can go to uhurusolidarity.org, click pay reparations, continue to contribute. We are committed to reach our goal by the end of the weekend. But honestly, let's just do it by the end of the night. So go to uhurusolidarity.org, click pay reparations, $1,340 left to go. And I just wanted to say that tomorrow there will be the bus tour of the Black Power Blueprint led by Deputy Chair Onizane Shatella. It's going to be amazing. You do not want to miss that. Same time tomorrow, doors open at 8. The program starts at 9. We're also going to have a section on the program where we hear from more of our endorsers. And this convention this year received a lot of endorsements from organizations, and we have John McCarthy from the Center for Political Innovation who is here. Just want to salute John, who came from Chicago, who will be delivering a statement. We also have, we will be joined by Benjamin Prado of Unión del Barrio. He will be joining us tomorrow for a statement. And we'll also be hearing from the other organizations that sent in their solidarity statements. So that's going to be really important. And Lisa just reminded me that daylight savings time starts tomorrow. What does that mean? Change it. Which way? Spring forward. I still don't know what that means. Okay, so you lose an hour. So okay, 6:45. So figure that out. Be on time is basically the point. Okay, there you go. And then also that to conclude the convention, it will be transitioning into a special event hosted by the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement called Meet the Uhuru Legal Team, where the lawyers who are in attendance this weekend will be introduced to the community. And that's going to be a very, very powerful event. So that is basically the grand finale of the 2023 USM Convention. So that's what I wanted to say. And unity through. Hands off Uhuru. Uhuru.